What happens when a dying mother's only hope comes with a wedding ring and a monster in a tailored suit? Lena Carter never imagined her life would be bought and sold like merchandise. One signature, one cold contract, one impossible choice. Now she's bound to Adrian Volkov, a man whose name makes grown men tremble, whose empire is built on blood and secrets. He promised her mother would live. He never promised Lena her freedom. This is a story of survival, sacrifice, and the dangerous line between captivity and devotion. If you're hooked, stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city below so I can see how far this story reaches. Let's begin. The fluorescent lights of Marco's diner buzzed with their usual dying wasp hum, casting everything in that sickly yellow glow that made even the healthiest person look half dead. Lena Carter had long stopped noticing. After 14-hour shifts that bled into one another like watercolors in rain, she'd stopped noticing a lot of things. Her feet screamed inside her worn sneakers as she balanced 3 plates along her left arm, the Thursday night special, extra gravy, no onions for table 7. Her right hand carried 2 mugs of coffee that had been sitting on the burner so long they probably qualified as hazardous waste. "Order up, Lena!" Marco's voice cut through the dinner rush noise, eternally impatient, eternally demanding. "Got it," she called back, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. 23 years old, and she felt ancient. Felt like she'd lived entire lifetimes in the span of months. Before her mother's diagnosis, Lena had plans. Community college, maybe nursing school. Dreams that seemed so distant, now they might as well have belonged to someone else entirely. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer had a way of reshuffling priorities. She delivered the plates with her practiced smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes but satisfied customers enough to tip decently. Every dollar counted. Every cent went into the jar she kept hidden in her apartment, marked Mom's Treatment in fading Sharpie. It would never be enough. She knew that. The experimental trial her mother needed cost more than Lena would make in 5 years of slinging hash and pouring coffee. But she couldn't stop trying. Couldn't stop hoping that somehow, impossibly, she'd find a way. "Lena, table 3 needs a refill," Sandra called from behind the counter, her fellow waitress, and the closest thing Lena had to a friend these days. On it. The dinner crowd thinned around 8, the usual weeknight pattern. Lena's shift didn't end until 11, but the worst of it was over. She allowed herself a moment to lean against the wall near the kitchen, closing her eyes, trying to ignore the persistent ache in her lower back. "You look like hell," Sandra observed, appearing beside her with 2 glasses of ice water. She pressed one into Lena's hand. "When's the last time you slept more than 4 hours?" "Can't remember." Lena drank deeply, the cold water a small mercy. "Doesn't matter." "It matters." Sandra's voice softened. "How's your mom?" The question landed like it always did, a stone in still water, sending ripples of grief and fear in all directions. "Stable. For now. The pain management is helping, but—" She trailed off. They both knew the rest. Stable wasn't cured. Stable was borrowed time, and the loan was coming due. The trial? Still can't afford it. Lena's laugh was bitter. Might as well be asking for the moon. Sandra squeezed her shoulder, her weathered face creased with sympathy. Before she could respond, the bell above the diner's entrance chimed. Lena glanced up reflexively, force of habit, assessing the new customer, and froze. The man who entered didn't walk so much as command space. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Lena's annual salary. Everything about him screamed money and power, from his polished Italian leather shoes to the platinum watch catching the sickly fluorescent light. But it was his face that arrested her attention. Sharp features that might have been handsome if they weren't so cold. Dark eyes that swept the diner with the calculating precision of a predator assessing prey. Hair so black it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. He looked completely, utterly out of place in Marco's diner. "I've got this one," Sandra muttered, already moving forward. But those dark eyes had already found Lena, fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He moved toward the counter with fluid grace, and somehow Lena knew with bone-deep certainty that he wasn't here for the Thursday night special. Lena Carter? His voice matched everything else about him, smooth, controlled, and utterly devoid of warmth. Her heart kicked against her ribs. "Who's asking?" "My name is Adrian Volkov." He said it like she should recognize it. When her expression remained blank, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or amusement. "I have a proposition for you." "I'm working." "I'm aware." He glanced around the diner with barely concealed disdain. "This won't take long. Sit with me." It wasn't a request. Lena looked toward Marco, who was watching from the kitchen window with narrowed eyes. She caught Sandra's worried expression. Every instinct screamed danger, but curiosity warred with caution, and beneath both, a desperate, treacherous hope whispered, "What if? What if this impossibly wealthy stranger could help? What if this was the miracle she'd been praying for?" "5 minutes," she said, sliding into the booth across from him. Up close, Adrian Volkov was even more unsettling. His cologne was expensive, something dark and spiced that probably had a French name. His hands, resting on the table, were immaculate. No rings, she noticed, no wedding band. But there was something about the way he held himself, the coiled tension beneath the expensive suit, that suggested violence as easily as civility. "Your mother is dying," he said without preamble. The words hit like a physical blow. Lena's fingers clenched around the edge of the table. "How do you—" "I make it my business to know things." He leaned back, somehow making the worn vinyl booth look like a throne. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Diagnosis 14 months ago. Declined rapidly over the past 6 months. Current treatment is palliative care only. Life expectancy, 3 to 6 months without intervention. Ice flooded Lena's veins. "You had me investigated." "I did." "Why?" "Because I need something from you." Adrian's gaze never wavered. "And you need something from me. I believe we can come to an arrangement." "I don't understand." "It's quite simple." He folded his hands, a businessman discussing a merger, not a stranger disrupting her life. "There's an experimental treatment trial at Westbrook Medical Center, promising results for pancreatic cancer patients. Your mother was rejected due to cost." Lena's throat tightened. "I know. The application was $400,000 for the full treatment cycle." Adrian continued as if she hadn't spoken. "Plus ongoing care, monitoring, medication, total estimated cost, $600,000 over 2 years. The numbers were obscene, impossible. She'd done the math so many times the figures were burned into her brain. "I can't afford—" "I can." Silence crashed between them. Lena stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "What?" "I will pay for your mother's treatment in full. Westbrook Medical Center, the experimental trial, all associated costs. In addition, I'll ensure she has the best possible care, private room, top specialists, whatever she needs. She'll want for nothing." The world tilted sideways. Lena gripped the table edge, her knuckles white. "Why would you do that? You don't know me. You don't know her." "You're correct. I don't." Adrian's expression remained impassive. "But I have a problem that requires a very specific solution. You can provide that solution." "I don't have anything you could possibly need." "You're wrong." He reached into his jacket. Lena tensed, but he only withdrew a slim folder, placing it on the table between them. "I need a wife." The words didn't make sense. Lena blinked at him, then at the folder, feeling like she'd stumbled into someone else's conversation. "Excuse me?" "A wife, a spouse, a legal marriage." Adrian tapped the folder. "For reasons I won't discuss, I require the appearance of a stable, traditional marriage. You require substantial financial resources to save your mother's life. I'm proposing an exchange. You're insane." "I assure you, I'm quite sane." There was nothing in his tone but cold pragmatism. "And I'm offering you the only option you have. Without my intervention, your mother will be dead within 6 months. With it, she has a fighting chance at real survival. All I ask in return is your cooperation for a period of 2 years. Lena's mind reeled. "This is insane," she repeated, because the words kept not making sense. "You can't just—" "People don't—" "People do whatever is necessary." Adrian opened the folder, revealing legal documents dense with text. "The contract is straightforward. We marry. You live in my home and fulfill the public role of my wife, attending events, meeting certain social obligations. In exchange, your mother receives full medical care, and you receive a monthly allowance of $10,000 for the duration of the contract. $10,000 a month, plus her mother's treatment, plus a chance, an actual, real chance at saving her life. Lena's hands shook. And what do you get out of this? Really? Legitimacy, appearances, the details don't concern you. Everything about this concerns me. Her voice rose, drawing glances from nearby tables. She lowered it to a harsh whisper. You're talking about marriage, about my life. You think I'm just going to sign over 2 years to a complete stranger? I think you're going to do whatever it takes to save your mother. Adrian's eyes were chips of black ice. Because the alternative is watching her die, knowing you had a chance to prevent it and chose pride instead. The cruelty of the statement knocked the air from her lungs. You're a monster. Perhaps. He slid the contract toward her. But I'm a monster offering you exactly what you need. The question is, are you brave enough to take it? Lena stared at the papers, her vision blurring. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen in real life. Mysterious billionaires didn't appear in dingy diners with Faustian bargains, but Adrian Volkov sat across from her, solid and real and waiting. And somewhere across town, her mother lay in a hospital bed, dying by inches, while Lena worked herself to exhaustion for money that would never, ever be enough. I need to think. No. Adrian's voice cut like a blade. You need to decide, right now. This offer expires when I leave this diner. Either you sign or your mother's fate is sealed. That's not fair. Life rarely is. He pulled a pen from his jacket, set it on top of the contract. Decide, Lena. Your mother's life or your freedom. You can't have both. Tears burned hot behind her eyes. She wouldn't cry. Wouldn't give this stranger, this cruel, calculating stranger, the satisfaction of seeing her break. But her hands trembled as she reached for the contract, scanning terms she barely processed through the haze of shock and desperation. Marriage contract. 2 years. Financial compensation. Medical care provided. Grounds for termination. Penalties for breach. What about... She swallowed hard. What about physical expectations? Understanding flickered across his face. The marriage is legal only. You'll have your own quarters. I have no interest in that aspect of the arrangement. Small mercy. And after 2 years? Divorce. Clean, quiet, with a substantial settlement for you. An additional $200,000. Your mother's care continues regardless. It was too much, too fast, too impossible, but real. Lena thought of her mother's smile, growing rarer each day beneath the weight of pain. Thought of the light fading from eyes that had once sparkled with life. Thought of the future she was watching slip away, helpless to stop it. She picked up the pen. Wait. Adrian's hand covered hers, surprisingly warm against her cold skin. For the first time, something almost like humanity crossed his features. Understand what you're agreeing to. This isn't a fairy tale. I'm not a good man, Lena. My world is dangerous, controlled, and unforgiving. You'll be isolated, monitored. Your freedom will be severely restricted. Are you certain you can live with that? She met his eyes. Can you cure my mother? I can give her the best chance available. Then I'm certain. Something shifted in his expression. Approval, perhaps, or recognition. He released her hand. Sign. Lena signed. Each stroke of the pen felt like sealing her soul away, but she didn't stop, didn't hesitate. When the final signature was complete, Adrian gathered the papers with brisk efficiency. Your mother will be transferred to Westbrook tomorrow morning. I'll send a car for you at 6 p.m. to take you to your new home. Bring whatever personal items you need. Everything else will be provided. Tomorrow? Panic fluttered in her chest. That's too fast. I need to... Tomorrow, he repeated, standing. The conversation was over. He'd gotten what he came for. Don't be late, Lena. I don't tolerate unpunctuality. He left without another word, without looking back, leaving her sitting in the booth with her life irrevocably changed. Sandra appeared at her elbow moments later, sliding into the seat Adrian had vacated. What the hell was that? Who was that guy? Lena stared at the door where Adrian Volkov had disappeared into the night. My husband. The next 18 hours passed in a blur. Lena called the hospital at midnight, was transferred 3 times, and finally reached her mother's night nurse. I need to speak with Dr. Richardson. It's urgent. It's the middle of the night, Ms. Carter. Please. Her voice cracked. It's about my mother's treatment, an experimental trial. It's been approved and funded. I need confirmation. The nurse put her on hold. Lena paced her tiny apartment, too wired for sleep, too overwhelmed for coherent thought. When Dr. Richardson finally came on the line, his voice was cautious. Ms. Carter, I just received notification from Westbrook Medical Center. Your mother has been accepted into their trial program, effective immediately. I have to say, I'm stunned. The last I heard, funding was the barrier. It's been handled. Lena's legs gave out. She sank onto her second-hand couch. When does she transfer? Tomorrow morning. They're sending a private medical transport at 8 a.m. A pause. Ms. Carter, this is extraordinary. Westbrook's program is highly selective. How did you manage up? Does it matter? She's getting treatment? Yes, the best possible treatment. His tone warmed slightly. I'll be honest, I didn't think this was possible. Your mother is very lucky. Lucky. The word tasted like ashes. Thank you, Dr. Richardson. She hung up and let the tears come finally, sobbing into her hands in the dark apartment. Relief and terror warred in equal measure. Her mother would live. That was all that mattered. The price, 2 years of her life, her freedom, her future, was irrelevant. Wasn't it? At dawn, she called Marco and quit. He blustered and complained, but she barely heard him. Sandra took the phone, voice gentle. Tell me you didn't do something crazy. I did something necessary. Lena stared at her meager belongings, trying to decide what to pack. I can't explain, but I'm okay. I promise. That rich guy from last night. This is about him. I have to go, Sandra. Lena? She ended the call. There would be time for explanations later, or maybe there wouldn't. Maybe this was the end of Lena Carter's old life, cleanly severed, impossible to return to. At 7 a.m., she took the bus to the hospital. Her mother was awake, confused by the sudden flurry of activity as nurses prepared her for transfer. Lena. Her voice was reed-thin, worn down by months of pain. What's happening? They said I'm going to Westbrook, but I don't understand. We can't afford... Don't worry about that. Lena took her mother's frail hand, shocked as always by how light it felt, how fragile. Everything's taken care of. You're going to get the treatment. You're going to get better. How? I found a way. She forced brightness into her tone. That's all that matters. Her mother's eyes, still sharp despite everything, searched her face. What did you do? What I had to. Lena squeezed her hand gently. I love you, Mom. More than anything. Just focus on getting well, okay? Lena, if you've gotten yourself into something, I'm fine. Better than fine. The lies came easier than expected. I'll visit you at Westbrook as soon as you're settled. The transport team arrived, efficient and professional. They loaded her mother onto a specialized gurney with practiced care. Lena followed them to the ambulance, watching as they secured her mother inside what looked more like a mobile hospital suite than a regular ambulance. We'll take excellent care of her, one of the paramedics assured Lena. Westbrook is expecting us. She'll be in evaluation within the hour. Lena watched the ambulance disappear into morning traffic, taking with it the woman who'd raised her, sacrificed for her, loved her unconditionally. And in exchange, Lena had sold herself to a stranger. Worth it, she told herself. Whatever happens, it's worth it. She almost believed it. At exactly 6 p.m., a sleek black town car pulled up outside her apartment building. Lena had spent the day in a daze, packing her few belongings into 2 duffel bags. Clothes, mostly. A few photos. The jewelry box her father had given her before he died. Everything that mattered fit into bags she could carry herself. A depressing realization about the scope of her life. The driver was a mountain of a man, professional and silent. He loaded her bags into the trunk without comment, opened the rear door, waited. Lena took one last look at the building that had been home for 3 years. It wasn't much. Fourth floor walk-up, water stains on the ceiling, radiator that clanked all winter, but it was hers. Had been hers. She got into the car. They drove through the city as twilight settled, leaving her neighborhood's familiar streets for areas Lena had only seen in magazines. The buildings grew taller, newer, more expensive. The people on the sidewalks wore designer clothes and walked designer dogs. This was a different world entirely. The car pulled through iron gates, actual iron gates, into a private drive. The house beyond made Lena's breath catch. Not a house, an estate. 3 stories of modern architecture, all clean lines and massive windows set back from the street behind manicured grounds. Lights glowed warmly from within, but there was nothing welcoming about the place. It looked like what it was, a fortress disguised as a home. The driver opened her door. "Miss Carter?" She stepped out on unsteady legs, staring up at the building that would be her prison for the next 2 years. The front door opened. A woman emerged, 50s, severe, dressed in what looked like a uniform. Her expression was as warm as January frost. "Miss Carter, I'm Mrs. Chen, the house manager. Please come inside." Lena followed her into a foyer larger than her entire former apartment. Marble floors, vaulted ceilings, a chandelier that probably cost more than her mother's first car. Everything was pristine, expensive, and utterly impersonal. "Mr. Volkov is delayed at the office," Mrs. Chen said, her heels clicking sharply against the marble. "He asked that I show you to your quarters and familiarize you with the house rules." "House rules?" Mrs. Chen's smile could have frozen water. "Indeed, the West Wing is Mr. Volkov's private domain. You are not to enter without express permission. The kitchen staff will prepare your meals, but you're to eat in the breakfast room or your own quarters, not the main dining room unless Mr. Volkov is present. You'll find appropriate clothing in your closet. Mr. Volkov took the liberty of having a wardrobe prepared for you." Each rule landed like a small cut. "Anything else?" "Security is paramount. You are not to leave the grounds without Mr. Volkov's knowledge and approval. There are cameras throughout the property, excluding your private bathroom. Any guests must be cleared 48 hours in advance." Mrs. Chen paused. "Do you have questions?" "Hundreds, thousands, starting with what the hell have I done?" But Lena only shook her head. "Very well, your quarters." They climbed a curved staircase to the second floor. Mrs. Chen led her down a hallway lined with original artwork that probably belonged in museums, stopping at a door near the eastern corner. "Your suite." The space beyond was larger than Lena's entire former apartment. A sitting room with elegant furniture, a bedroom with a king-size bed that looked like something from a luxury hotel, a bathroom with marble countertops, and a tub big enough to swim in. Everything was beautiful, expensive, and utterly soulless. "The closet is through there. Dinner is at 8 if you wish to join Mr. Volkov. Otherwise, I can have something sent up." Sent up is fine. The thought of sitting across from Adrian Volkov and making conversation made her stomach twist. Mrs. Chen nodded, unsurprised. "As you wish. If you need anything, use the house phone. Dial 0 for staff." She turned to leave, paused. "A word of advice, Ms. Carter. Mr. Volkov values privacy, discretion, and obedience. Life will be much easier if you remember that." Then she was gone, leaving Lena alone in her gilded cage. Lena sank onto the bed, staring around at the beautiful prison. Through the windows she could see the grounds, perfectly landscaped, utterly empty. Beyond the walls, the city continued without her. Life went on. People lived and loved and made choices that didn't require selling their souls. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Welcome home. We'll discuss expectations tomorrow." AV not welcoming, not kind. Just information, delivered with the same cold efficiency as everything else about Adrian Volkov. Lena set the phone aside and curled onto her side, still wearing her clothes, surrounded by luxury she'd never wanted. Somewhere across the city, her mother was beginning treatment. That was what mattered. That was the only thing that could matter. She'd made her choice. Signed the contract. Sold 2 years of her life for the chance to save another. Now she had to live with it. Sleep wouldn't come. Lena lay in the massive bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing through everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. Yesterday morning, she'd been Lena Carter, waitress, struggling daughter, unremarkable in every way. Now she was… what? Mrs. Volkov? Adrian's wife? A bought woman living in a beautiful cage? At 11 p.m., she gave up on sleep. She wandered her suite, opening drawers and closets, discovering the scope of her new circumstances. The closet Mrs. Chen had mentioned was actually a room unto itself. Rows of clothing hung in neat lines, dresses, slacks, blouses, all in her size. Designer labels she recognized from magazines but had never imagined wearing. Shoes organized by style and color. Jewelry in a locked case she couldn't open. Everything chosen for her. Everything decided without her input. She found a robe, silk, because of course it was, and wrapped herself in it, needing something between her skin and the expensive strangeness of everything around her. The sitting room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the grounds. Lena stood there, forehead pressed against the cool glass, watching the distant city lights. Her old life was out there somewhere. Her apartment probably already being shown to new tenants. The diner where Sandra would be finishing the late shift. The hospital where her mother had suffered. And Westbrook Medical Center where her mother was hopefully sleeping comfortably, finally receiving care that might actually help. Worth it, Lena reminded herself. It has to be worth it. A knock at her door made her jump. Ms. Carter? A young woman's voice, unfamiliar. I have your dinner. Lena opened the door to find a maid, not Mrs. Chen, someone younger, with kind eyes, holding a covered tray. I didn't order anything. Mrs. Chen mentioned you might be hungry. The maid stepped inside without waiting for permission, setting the tray on a small table. There's chicken, vegetables, and soup, and tea, chamomile to help you sleep. Thank you. Lena's voice came out smaller than intended. The maid smiled, the first genuine warmth Lena had encountered since entering this house. I'm Maria. If you need anything, just call. I know this is all… She gestured vaguely. A lot. That's one word for it. Mister. Volkov isn't as bad as he seems, Maria offered, then immediately looked like she regretted saying it. I should go. Enjoy your dinner. She left quickly, leaving Lena alone with food she had no appetite for and words that felt like lies. Not as bad as he seems. Adrian Volkov seemed like a man who bought women and locked them in luxury prisons. How much worse could he actually be? Lena forced herself to eat, if only because she needed strength for whatever came next. The food was excellent, of course it was, but tasted like dust in her mouth. At midnight, she finally crawled back into bed. The sheets were high thread count Egyptian cotton, cool and smooth against her skin. The mattress was perfectly firm. Everything was perfect except the fact that she was here, alone, afraid, and bound by contract to a stranger. She thought of her mother, hopefully sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. She thought of the contract she'd signed, the words she'd barely read in her desperation. She thought of Adrian Volkov's cold eyes and colder voice. I'm not a good man, Lena. Finally, exhausted beyond measure, she slept and dreamed of cages made of gold. Morning arrived with brutal efficiency. Lena woke to sunlight streaming through windows she'd forgotten to cover, her body aching from tension she'd carried even in sleep. For one blissful moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then reality crashed back. The silk sheets, the enormous room, the contract that had transformed her into property overnight. A soft knock preceded Maria's entrance. Good morning, Ms. Carter. Mr. Volkov requests your presence for breakfast in 30 minutes. Requests. As if Lena had a choice. I'll be ready, she managed, her voice rough with sleep. Maria had laid out clothes, a simple but elegant dress in deep navy, understated jewelry, even shoes that somehow fit perfectly. Everything chosen by someone else, everything controlled. Lena showered in the marble bathroom, trying not to think about the cameras Mrs. Chen had mentioned. Her private bathroom was supposedly exempt, but trust felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. She dressed quickly, her hands shaking slightly as she fastened the delicate necklace. The woman in the mirror looked like a stranger, polished, put together. Nothing like the exhausted waitress who'd served coffee in a dying diner just 2 days ago. Mrs. Chen appeared exactly at the appointed time, her expression as severe as yesterday. Mr. Volkov is waiting. This way. The breakfast room was on the first floor, all windows and natural light, somehow managing to feel both spacious and intimate. Adrian sat at the head of a table that could easily seat 12, reading something on a tablet, a cup of black coffee at his elbow. He looked up as Lena entered. Those dark eyes swept over her, assessing, cataloging. Sit. Not good morning, not how did you sleep. Just a command delivered with the expectation of obedience. Lena sat at the opposite end of the table, the distance between them a small rebellion. Adrian's mouth twitched. Amusement or annoyance, she couldn't tell. Mrs. Chen, thank you. We'll serve ourselves. The house manager disappeared, leaving them alone. Staff materialized to place food on the table. Fruit, pastries, eggs, prepared 3 different ways, then vanished like ghosts. Eat, Adrian said, returning his attention to the tablet. We have things to discuss, but not on an empty stomach. Lena's appetite was non-existent, but she forced herself to take small portions. The food was excellent, wasted on her churning stomach. Adrian ate with the same controlled efficiency he seemed to apply to everything, never looking at her, entirely comfortable with the silence. Finally, he set the tablet aside. Your mother was admitted to Westbrook yesterday. Initial evaluations are promising. Dr. Morrison, the lead oncologist, believes she's a strong candidate for the trial. Relief flooded through her so intensely it hurt. Thank you, Lena whispered. Don't thank me. We had an agreement. I'm fulfilling my end. He took a sip of coffee. Now you'll fulfill yours. There it was, the price, coming due. We'll be married officially next week. A small ceremony, justice of the peace, minimal witnesses, purely procedural. Adrian's tone suggested he was discussing a business merger, not a wedding. Following that, there will be social obligations. Dinners, charity events, occasions where you'll need to appear as my wife. Mrs. Chen will brief you on expectations and etiquette. I know how to behave in public, Lena said, stung. You know how to serve food and smile for tips. That's not the same as navigating the circles we'll be moving in. His bluntness was casual, devastating. You'll need training, deportment, conversation, appropriate responses to various social situations. We have a week. I suggest you prove yourself a quick study. Heat rushed to her cheeks. You think I'm some kind of project? Something to be molded into whatever shape suits you? I think you're a woman who made a bargain. Adrian's eyes locked with hers, cold and uncompromising. The contract doesn't require me to be gentle about the reality of that bargain. You wanted your mother saved. I'm saving her. In exchange, you perform the role I need. If your pride is wounded by the truth of what that entails, I suggest you develop a thicker skin quickly. Lena's hands clenched in her lap, nails digging into her palms. She wanted to scream at him, wanted to throw something, wanted to tell him exactly what she thought of his arrogance and his cruelty and his casual destruction of her dignity. But her mother was alive, was receiving treatment, was being given a chance. She swallowed her anger like broken glass. What else? You'll have limited freedom initially. The grounds are yours to explore, but you don't leave without my knowledge and a security escort. No visitors without prior approval. All phone calls and internet usage are monitored. You're making me a prisoner. I'm protecting an investment. Adrian's expression didn't change. My world has enemies, Lena. People who would love nothing more than to find a weakness they could exploit. Until I'm certain you understand the rules and the risks, your movements are restricted. Consider it a probationary period. And after? Do I ever get to have a normal life? There is nothing normal about this arrangement. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be for both of us. He stood, the conversation clearly over. Mrs. Chen will collect you at 10. Your training begins today. I suggest you approach it with an open mind. He left without waiting for a response, taking his coffee and his tablet and his absolute control with him. Lena sat alone at the enormous table, surrounded by food she couldn't eat and luxury she couldn't enjoy, and wondered what exactly she'd condemned herself to. The next week was a blur of instruction and correction. Mrs. Chen proved to be a relentless teacher. Posture first. Lena's shoulders were too hunched, her walk too casual. Hours of practice balancing books on her head like some Victorian finishing school nightmare. Then table manners, because apparently Lena had been eating wrong her entire life. Which fork for which course? How to hold a wine glass. The proper way to dab her lips with a napkin. Mr. Volkov's associates come from old money, Mrs. Chen explained. her tone suggesting Lena was a particularly slow student. They notice these things. One mistake, and they'll know exactly what you are. And what am I? Lena asked, exhausted and aching from maintaining perfect posture for 3 hours straight. Mrs. Chen's smile was sharp as a blade. Someone pretending to be something she's not. Your job is to make them forget that. There were lessons in conversation, topics to avoid, topics to encourage. Never discuss politics or religion. Always compliment without seeming obsequious. Laugh at jokes even if they're not funny, but not too loudly. Ask questions that allow others to talk about themselves. You're teaching me to be a performing seal, Lena muttered after one particularly grueling session. I'm teaching you to survive in a world that will eat you alive if you show weakness. Mrs. Chen's expression softened fractionally. Mr. Volkov chose you for reasons I don't pretend to understand. But he's given you an opportunity most women in your position would kill for. Don't waste it on pride. Lena bit back a sharp response. Pride was all she had left. A stylist arrived on day 3, a whirlwind named Dominique, who took one look at Lena's hair and gasped like she'd witnessed a crime. Within hours, Lena's simple brown hair had been cut, colored with subtle highlights, styled into something that looked effortless, but probably required an engineering degree to replicate. Better, Dominique pronounced, circling Lena like a predator. The bones are good. The skin needs work. When did you last have a proper facial? Never mind, I can tell. We'll fix it. More treatments. More products. More people touching her, molding her, transforming her into someone she didn't recognize. Adrian appeared only in the evenings, usually for dinner. He ate in silence, occasionally asking Mrs. Chen about Lena's progress, never addressing Lena directly. She might as well have been furniture for all the attention he paid her. On day 5, he finally spoke to her across the dinner table. The wedding is scheduled for tomorrow at 2 p.m. Wear what Mrs. Chen has selected. We'll be done in under an hour. Lena set down her fork carefully. Is there anything you'd like to know about me before we're legally married? Any questions at all? No. The casual dismissal stung more than it should have. I'm a real person, you know, not just a role to fill. Adrian looked at her then, really looked, and something flickered in those dark eyes. I'm aware you're a person, Lena. That's not relevant to our arrangement. How is it not relevant? We're getting married. We're signing a legal contract that happens to take the form of marriage. Your personhood is acknowledged. Your feelings about the situation are your own to manage. He returned his attention to his meal. I suggest you do so. Lena wanted to scream, wanted to upend the table and storm out. But where would she go? This was her home now, her prison, her life for the next 2 years. She finished her meal in silence, each bite a small act of defiance against her own despair. That night, unable to sleep, she called Westbrook Medical Center. The night nurse recognized her voice now. Your mother is doing well, Ms. Carter. She started the first treatment round today. Some nausea, but within normal parameters. Doctor, Morrison is very pleased with her response so far. Can I speak with her? She's sleeping. The medication makes her drowsy. But I can have her call you tomorrow? No. Lena's throat tightened. No, let her rest. Just tell her I love her when she wakes up. Tell her I love her and I'll visit soon. Of course. Lena ended the call and curled onto the window seat, staring out at the grounds. The gates were barely visible from here, but she knew they were there, locked, monitored, keeping the world out and her in. Her mother was getting better. That was what mattered. That was the only thing that could matter. She repeated it like a prayer until she believed it. The wedding was exactly as romantic as a tax audit. They drove to the courthouse in Adrian's black Mercedes, Lena wearing a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than her monthly rent used to. No white, no veil. Nothing that suggested this was anything but a transaction. Adrian wore a suit that fit like it had been made for him, which it probably had, and maintained his usual silence during the drive. His driver navigated morning traffic with professional efficiency, while Lena tried not to think about what she was about to do. The ceremony took 12 minutes. A judge who clearly knew Adrian personally, the familiarity in his greeting suggested history Lena didn't want to examine, performed the service with brisk efficiency. Mrs. Chen and the driver served as witnesses. There were rings, simple platinum bands that Adrian produced from his jacket pocket like an afterthought. Do you, Adrian Volkov, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Flat, emotionless, a checkbox marked. And do you, Lena Carter, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Lena's throat closed. This was it, the final point of no return. She could still walk away, could run from the courthouse and disappear into the city. But her mother's face rose in her mind, weak, dying, finally getting the care she desperately needed. I do, she whispered. The judge smiled. Then by the power vested in me by the state, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Adrian's hand was warm as it cupped her face, tilting her chin up. His kiss was brief, perfunctory, nothing like what a first kiss as husband and wife should be. But his lips were softer than she expected, and for just a moment Lena caught the scent of his cologne, that dark, spiced fragrance that was becoming familiar. Then it was over. Adrian stepped back, already turning to shake the judge's hand, thanking him for his time. Just like that, Lena Carter became Lena Volkov. They signed papers. The judge made a joke about marital bliss that neither of them laughed at. Mrs. Chen produced a camera and took exactly 3 photographs, evidence Lena supposed that this farce had actually happened. On the drive home, Adrian made a phone call, speaking in rapid Russian to someone on the other end. Lena stared out the window, watching the city pass by, trying to process what she'd just done. She was married, to a stranger. A cold, controlling stranger who'd bought her like merchandise and expected her to perform like a trained animal. We'll announce it tomorrow, Adrian said, ending his call. Selective media outlets, a prepared statement about a private ceremony. You're not to speak to press under any circumstances. All inquiries go through my communications team. Of course they do, Lena muttered. Excuse me? She turned to face him. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Just your wife agreeing to another rule in her cage. Adrian's expression hardened. If you have something to say it clearly. What would be the point? You don't care what I think. You don't care how I feel. You bought what you needed, and now you're managing your investment. I get it. Message received loud and clear. Silence filled the car, tense and dangerous. When Adrian finally spoke, his voice was low and controlled, which somehow made it more threatening. You're angry. I understand. This isn't the life you imagined for yourself. But let me be very clear, Lena. You made a choice. You signed a contract knowing full well what you were agreeing to. If you regret that choice now, that's unfortunate, but it changes nothing. You're my wife. You'll perform the duties required of you, and you'll do so without petulance or dramatics. Are we understood? Perfectly. She turned back to the window, blinking against tears she refused to shed in front of him. They didn't speak for the rest of the drive. The first public appearance came 3 days later. A charity gala for children's cancer research, deeply ironic given the circumstances. Lena wore a gown that cost more than her car used to. Midnight blue silk that clung to curves she didn't know she had, with jewelry that probably required its own security detail. Adrian entered her suite while she was still getting ready, Maria putting final touches on Lena's hair. He dismissed the maid with a gesture, leaving them alone. Stand up, he commanded. Lena did, feeling exposed under his scrutiny. He circled her slowly, and she hated the way her pulse jumped at his proximity. You'll do, he said finally. Not a compliment, just an assessment. Remember what Mrs. Chen taught you. Smile, be pleasant. Let me do the talking. If someone asks you a direct question, keep your answers brief and redirect back to them. You're arm candy tonight, nothing more. How flattering. His hand shot out, gripping her chin, not hard enough to hurt, but firmly enough to force her to meet his eyes. This is important, Lena. I need you to understand how important. The people at this event are powerful, connected, and dangerous in ways you can't begin to imagine. One wrong word from you could have consequences neither of us wants to deal with. Then maybe you should have married someone from your world instead of a waitress you're trying to pass off as something she's not. Maybe I should have. He released her abruptly. But I didn't. I married you. So tonight you're going to prove that wasn't a mistake. The gala was held at a historic hotel downtown, all marble and gold and crystal chandeliers that probably predated electricity. Lena's heels clicked against the floor as they entered, her hand resting lightly on Adrian's arm, the perfect picture of a devoted wife. The room was full of people who looked like they'd never experienced a day of hardship in their lives. Designer gowns, tailored tuxedos, jewelry that could fund small nations, and the way they looked at Lena, assessing, judging, calculating her worth, and finding her wanting. Adrian, a silver-haired man approached, arms spread in greeting. Congratulations on your marriage. We were all shocked by the announcement. Thank you, Marcus. Adrian's smile was perfect, warm without being genuine. I'd like you to meet my wife, Lena. Marcus took her hand, his grip lingering just a moment too long. Enchanted. You're quite different from Adrian's usual companions. The pause before companions was deliberate, pointed. Lena felt heat rise in her cheeks. I'm very lucky, she managed, her voice steady despite her discomfort. Indeed. Marcus's eyes swept over her, appraising. Tell me, Lena, how did you meet our Adrian here? He's been terribly mysterious about the whole courtship. Lena's mind went blank. They hadn't prepared a story, hadn't discussed what to say when we met through mutual friends, Adrian interjected smoothly. Nothing dramatic. Sometimes the best things happen quietly. How romantic. Marcus didn't sound convinced. Well, I hope you know what you're getting into, my dear. Adrian has quite the reputation. Marcus, if you'll excuse us, I see the mayor has arrived. Adrian steered Lena away before she could respond, his hand firm at the small of her back. I didn't know what to say, Lena whispered as they moved through the crowd. You weren't supposed to say anything. That's why I interrupted. His mouth was close to her ear, his breath warm against her skin. Marcus is fishing for information. Everyone here is. Our marriage was sudden. They want to know why. They want to find the weakness, the angle, the truth beneath the surface. And what is the truth? That's none of their business. He snagged 2 glasses of champagne from a passing waiter, pressing one into her hand. Drink? Smile. We're blissfully happy newlyweds, remember? The night became a parade of fake smiles and careful conversations. Adrian introduced her to an endless stream of people whose names she immediately forgot. Business associates, politicians, society matrons who looked at her like she was a particularly interesting insect. Through it all, she played her part, keeping her answers vague, deflecting questions, laughing at jokes that weren't funny. Her face hurt from smiling. You're doing well, Adrian murmured during a brief moment alone. They were standing at the edge of the ballroom, watching couples dance to an orchestra that probably cost more per hour than Lena used to make in a month. I'm exhausted. Another hour, then we can leave. His hand found the small of her back again, a gesture that was becoming familiar, possessive, but not unkind. For what it's worth, you're handling this better than I expected. It wasn't much of a compliment, but coming from Adrian, it felt like high praise. They made it another 45 minutes before Lena's careful composure began to crack. The room was too hot, too crowded, too full of people staring at her like she was a curiosity in a museum. Her head pounded. Her feet screamed in the expensive heels. The corset built into her dress made breathing difficult. I need air, she told Adrian, not caring that they were mid-conversation with someone important. He read something in her face. Distress, maybe, or desperation. Excuse us, he told the senator they'd been talking to, and guided Lena toward the terrace. The cool night air hit her like a blessing. Lena gulped it down, her hands gripping the stone balustrade, trying to steady herself. Are you going to be sick? Adrian asked, clinical but not cruel. No. Maybe. I don't know. She closed her eyes. How do you do this all the time? The performance, the lies, the constant calculation. Practice. He stood beside her, not touching, giving her space. And necessity. This is my world, Lena. These people, these events, they're the cost of the life I've built. It's exhausting. Yes. For the first time, she heard something almost like understanding in his voice. But you'll adapt. Humans are remarkably resilient when they have to be. She laughed, the sound bitter. Is that supposed to be encouraging? It's supposed to be true. He checked his watch. We've made our appearance. We can leave. The drive home was quieter than the drive to the gala. Lena kicked off her heels the moment she was in the car, groaning with relief. Adrian made no comment, just loosened his tie and stared out his window. Thank you, Lena said softly. He turned to her, surprised. For what? For getting me out of there before I made a scene. I was protecting my investment, remember? But his tone lacked its usual edge. Still, thank you. He nodded, almost imperceptibly, and they finished the drive in companionable silence. Something shifted that night. Not dramatically, not enough to change the fundamental reality of their arrangement. But when Adrian bid her goodnight at her suite door, his expression was fractionally less cold than usual. You did well tonight, he said. Get some rest. It wasn't much, but it was something. Lena clung to that small something as she fell asleep, too tired to even change out of her gown. The next 2 weeks fell into a routine. Mornings with Mrs. Chen, continuing the endless lessons in deportment and social graces. Afternoons spent reading or exploring the grounds, always aware of the cameras, the security, the invisible walls of her prison. Evenings with Adrian, usually quiet dinners where they ate in silence. He began asking her questions, small ones at first. How's your mother? Good. The doctor says she's responding well to treatment. That's good. A pause. Do you miss working? The question surprised her. The diner? Not really. I miss having purpose, I guess. Feeling useful. You're useful here. As decoration. As my wife. He set down his fork. That's not nothing, Lena. It feels like nothing. He studied her for a long moment. What would make it feel like something? She hadn't expected that. Hadn't expected him to care. I don't know. Maybe if I felt like less of a prisoner and more like a person with choices. Such as? Visiting my mother without needing security clearance. Having friends. Going outside these walls without an escort. She met his eyes. Having conversations with my husband that go beyond logistics and criticism. Adrian leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. The security isn't negotiable. Not yet. But the rest, he seemed to be choosing his words carefully. I'm not accustomed to companionship. My life is built on control and distance. Trust is a luxury I can't afford. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to see me as something other than an obligation. Silence stretched between them, heavy with words neither knew how to say. I'll consider it, Adrian said finally. Give me time. It wasn't a promise, but it was more than she'd had before. 3 weeks into the marriage, Lena woke feeling wrong. Not sick exactly, just off. Her body felt heavy, foreign. She pushed through it, getting ready for the day, forcing herself to eat breakfast even though the smell of coffee made her stomach turn. By afternoon, the wrongness had intensified. Exhaustion dragged at her like weights. Her head pounded. When she tried to stand from the couch where she'd been reading, the room tilted sideways. She made it to the bathroom before collapsing, her vision swimming, her body refusing to cooperate. Miss Carter? Maria's voice, distant and worried. Miss Carter, are you all right? Lena tried to answer but couldn't form words. The world was spinning, fading, slipping away from her like water through cupped hands. The last thing she remembered was Maria's scream for help, and then nothing. She woke in her bed, disoriented and aching. A doctor stood over her, middle-aged, professional, checking her pulse with practiced efficiency. Adrian stood by the window, his back rigid with tension. What happened? Lena's voice was a croak. You fainted, the doctor said gently. Gave everyone quite a scare. How are you feeling now? Terrible. Like I've been hit by a truck. That's not surprising given your vitals. Your blood pressure is low, you're dehydrated, and there are some other concerning indicators. He exchanged a glance with Adrian. When was your last menstrual period? The question seemed to come from nowhere. Lena's foggy brain struggled to process it. A few weeks ago? Maybe longer. I don't remember. Why? I'd like to run some tests, with your permission, of course. Oh, what kind of tests? Another glance at Adrian, who had turned from the window, his expression unreadable. I think you might be pregnant, Mrs. Volkov. The words didn't make sense, couldn't make sense. Lena laughed, a sharp, slightly hysterical sound. That's impossible. Is it? The doctor's tone was carefully neutral. Yes. My husband and I, we're not... She looked at Adrian, hoping he'd explain, but he remained silent. We haven't been together, like that. Not once. Lena. Adrian's voice was quiet, controlled, but there was something underneath it she couldn't identify. Let Dr. Morrison run the tests. This is insane. I can't be pregnant. You know I can't be pregnant. But even as she said it, doubt crept in. The exhaustion, the nausea, the way her body had felt wrong for days now. The tests will tell us for certain, Dr. Morrison said. I'll need a blood sample, Lena submitted numbly, watching her blood fill the vials, feeling like she was watching this happen to someone else. This couldn't be real. Couldn't be possible. Adrian hadn't touched her. Not once. Their marriage was in name only, he'd promised. She'd been so careful, so certain this was one line that wouldn't be crossed. Dr. Morrison left with his samples, promising results within hours. Lena and Adrian stared at each other across the bedroom, the silence between them crackling with unspoken questions. This is impossible, Lena said again, needing him to confirm it, needing him to tell her the doctor was wrong. We'll know soon enough. His face was a mask, revealing nothing. Adrian, you said we wouldn't. I know what I said. Then how? How could I possibly be pregnant? He didn't answer, just turned back to the window, his shoulders tight with tension she didn't understand. The wait for results was torture. Lena lay in bed, her mind racing through possibilities, each more impossible than the last. This had to be a mistake. Some other explanation. Stress could cause missed periods. Exhaustion could mimic pregnancy symptoms. The doctor was wrong. He had to be wrong. But deep in her gut, beneath the panic and denial, a tiny voice whispered the truth she wasn't ready to face. Dr. Morrison returned 3 hours later. His expression told Lena everything before he said a word. The tests are conclusive. You're pregnant, Mrs. Volkov, approximately 4 weeks along based on your hormone levels. The room spun again. Lena gripped the sheets, trying to anchor herself to reality. That's impossible, she whispered. I would remember. And then, like puzzle pieces clicking into place, fragments surfaced. The wedding night. The champagne she'd drunk too quickly on an empty stomach. Feeling dizzy, disoriented. Adrian helping her to her room. The memory fractured after that, blurred by alcohol and exhaustion, but there were moments, flashes of heat, of hands and breath, and, oh God, she looked at Adrian, who'd gone very still. The wedding night. I'll leave you two to talk, Dr. Morrison said quietly, letting himself out. Silence crashed down like a physical weight. You don't remember, Adrian said finally. Not a question. A statement. I remember pieces. I was drunk. You helped me upstairs. And then Lena pressed her hands to her face, trying to force the memories into focus. I thought I dreamed it. It was so vague, so unclear. I assumed it was the alcohol making me imagine things. It wasn't imagination. Adrian's voice was flat, emotionless. It happened. Why didn't you tell me? You were drunk, barely conscious. I thought. He stopped, jaw clenched. It doesn't matter what I thought. It happened. You were in no state to consent. That makes it my responsibility. The weight of that admission hung between them. You said you could never have children, Lena managed. You said it was impossible. I was told it was impossible. A medical condition from years ago. The doctors were certain. He laughed, the sound harsh and bitter. Apparently they were wrong. Lena stared down at her still flat stomach, trying to process the impossible reality growing inside her. A baby. Adrian's baby. Created in a moment neither of them fully remembered, binding them together in a way that went far beyond any contract. What do we do? She whispered. Adrian was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, softer, uncertain in a way she'd never heard from him. We adapt. We survive. We figure it out. He moved closer, sitting on the edge of the bed, still not quite touching her. I know this isn't what you wanted. It isn't what either of us wanted. But it's real now. Undeniable. We have to deal with it. I don't know if I can do this. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I don't know how to be a mother. I don't know how to be your wife. I don't know anything except that I'm terrified and I feel completely alone. You're not alone. His hand covered hers, warm and solid and real. I'm here. For better or worse, quite literally now, I'm here. She looked at their joined hands, at this man who was a stranger and a husband, and now the father of her child. Are you angry? I don't know what I am, he admitted, shocked, confused, trying to process the impossible. He met her eyes, but not angry, not at you. What happens now? Now you rest. We make sure you're healthy. We tell your mother, carefully, and we figure out how to navigate this new reality. His grip tightened fractionally. Together. It wasn't love, wasn't even affection, really, but it was something, a tentative alliance in the face of the impossible. Lena clung to that as exhaustion pulled her under, Adrian's hand still warm in hers, the future uncertain, but no longer quite so alone. Outside, the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Inside the cage that had become her home, Lena Volkov closed her eyes and tried to imagine what came next for a woman who'd sold herself into marriage and somehow found herself carrying a child she never expected with a man she barely knew. The contract had promised 2 years. The baby growing inside her promised forever. Everything had changed, and nothing would ever be the same again. The morning sickness started 2 days after the diagnosis, brutal and unrelenting. Lena spent the first hour after waking hunched over the toilet, her body rejecting everything while her mind struggled to accept the reality of what was happening inside her. Maria hovered anxiously in the doorway, offering ginger tea and crackers that Lena couldn't stomach. It will pass, Mrs. Volkov. My sister had terrible sickness with all 3 of hers. By the 2nd trimester, she was fine. 2nd trimester. The words felt surreal. Lena was going to be pregnant for months, was going to grow larger, slower, more vulnerable, was going to bring a life into this strange, controlled world she'd stumbled into. Adrian appeared while she was still on the bathroom floor, too exhausted to move. He didn't say anything, just crouched beside her and pressed a cool washcloth to her forehead. This is your fault, Lena mumbled, the words lacking any real venom. I know. His voice was quiet. Dr. Morrison is coming this afternoon. He'll prescribe something to help with the nausea. Nothing helps with this. We'll try anyway. He helped her to her feet with surprising gentleness, steadying her when she swayed. You need to eat something. Even if it comes back up, you need to try. Is that a medical opinion or a command? Both. But there was almost warmth in his tone. Come on, there's plain toast and weak tea waiting. Over the next week, something shifted between them. Adrian still maintained his distance, still controlled every aspect of her life, but the edges of his coldness had begun to soften. He checked on her multiple times a day, appeared whenever the morning sickness was particularly bad, made sure Dr. Morrison prescribed every possible remedy for her symptoms. You don't have to do this, Lena told him one evening as he brought her the anti-nausea medication himself instead of sending Maria. You have staff for this. You're carrying my child. He handed her the pills and a glass of water. That changes things. Does it? Or am I just a more valuable investment now? He flinched, actually flinched, and Lena felt a small, mean satisfaction at having landed a blow. You're not an investment, Adrian said carefully. You never were. You were a necessity, a solution to a problem. But this, he gestured vaguely at her stomach, this wasn't part of the plan. This is real in a way the contract never was. Real how? I don't know yet. The admission seemed to cost him, but we're going to figure it out. They told her mother a week later during Lena's first visit to Westbrook Medical Center since the wedding. The treatment had worked miracles already. Her mother's color was better, her eyes brighter, her movements less pained. She looked more alive than Lena had seen her in months. Sweetheart. Her mother's embrace was still fragile, but stronger than before. I've missed you so much. They won't let me have my phone during treatment cycles, and I've been going crazy wondering how married life is treating you. Lena caught Adrian's eye over her mother's shoulder. He stood near the door, giving them space, his expression carefully neutral. It's been an adjustment, Lena managed. But I have news. Good news, I think. Her mother pulled back, studying Lena's face with the instinct only mothers possess. What kind of news? I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air between them. Her mother's expression cycled through shock, confusion, joy, concern, landing somewhere in the vicinity of cautious happiness. Pregnant? You and Adrian. She looked past Lena to where Adrian stood. That was fast. It was unexpected, Adrian said, moving closer. But we're managing. Managing. Her mother's tone suggested she heard everything he wasn't saying. Lena, can we talk? Privately? Adrian excused himself without argument, leaving them alone in the private room that probably cost more per day than Lena's old apartment cost per month. Tell me the truth, her mother said the moment the door closed. Are you okay? Really okay? Lena sank into the visitor's chair, suddenly exhausted. I don't know, Mom. I honestly don't know. This whole situation is so complicated and strange, and now there's a baby coming, and I feel like I'm drowning in a life I never chose. But you did choose it. You chose me. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. Oh, sweetheart, what did you do? What did you give up for me? Nothing I wouldn't give 1,000 times over. Lena gripped her mother's hand. You're getting better. That's all that matters. It's not all that matters. Your happiness matters. Your future matters. She glanced toward the door. Adrian seems intense. Is he good to you? The question was more complicated than her mother could imagine. Was Adrian good to her? He was controlling, cold, demanding. But he was also careful with her now, attentive in his way, making sure she had everything she needed. He hadn't touched her since the wedding night, hadn't even tried. Kept his distance, except when her illness required his presence. He's not cruel, Lena said finally, and he's trying. I think the baby scared him as much as it scared me. Good. He should be scared. Raising a child is terrifying even under the best circumstances. Her mother's expression softened. But it's also wonderful. You're going to be a mother, Lena. My baby is having a baby. The tears came then, hot and overwhelming. Her mother held her while she cried, stroking her hair like she had when Lena was small, whispering reassurances that might have been lies but felt like truth. Adrian drove them home in silence, giving Lena space to process. She stared out the window, watching the city slide past, thinking about the life growing inside her and the impossible situation she'd created. Your mother looks good, Adrian said finally. She does. The treatment is working. I'm glad. He paused. She asked me if I loved you while you were saying goodbye. Lena's heart stuttered. What did you tell her? That I respect you, that I'll take care of you and the baby, that she doesn't need to worry about your future. Not love, then. I don't know how to love, Lena. I'm not built that way. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. But I can promise loyalty, protection, a life where you and our child want for nothing. It should have felt like enough. Should have been more than she'd expected from a man who'd married her for appearances. But some traitorous part of her heart ached for more, for something neither of them knew how to give. The first real threat came on a Tuesday. Lena had been granted limited freedom to walk the grounds, always with security nearby, but at least she could breathe fresh air and feel sunlight on her skin. She was sitting by the fountain in the garden, reading a book about pregnancy that terrified and fascinated her in equal measure, when the man appeared. He materialized from the trees that bordered the property, moving fast and purposeful. Lena looked up just as he grabbed her arm, yanking her to her feet. Don't scream, he hissed, pressing something cold and metallic against her side. A gun. He had a gun. You're coming with me, quietly, or I put a bullet in you right here. Terror flooded her system, freezing her vocal cords. This was real. This was happening. Someone was trying to kidnap her in her own backyard. Move! He started dragging her toward the trees. Training she didn't know she had kicked in, probably from all those years of waitressing, dealing with aggressive customers and worse. Lena went limp, making herself dead weight, and screamed. The security team materialized from nowhere. 3 men in dark suits, moving with lethal efficiency. The man holding Lena swore viciously and swung the gun toward them, but he never got the shot off. One of the guards hit him with something, a tranquilizer maybe, and he crumpled, taking Lena down with him. She hit the ground hard, the impact knocking the air from her lungs. Pain lanced through her side where she'd landed. Fear for the baby overwhelmed everything else. Mrs. Volkov! One of the guards, she thought his name was Marcus, helped her up, his hands gentle but urgent. Are you hurt? I don't know. The baby, I need. We're calling Dr. Morrison now. Can you walk? She nodded, letting him support her weight as they moved toward the house. Behind them, the other guards were securing the unconscious attacker, speaking rapidly into radios. Adrian met them at the door, his face a mask of cold fury that would have been terrifying if it wasn't directed past her at the man who'd attacked her. Get her inside. Now! His voice was lethal. Call Morrison. Tell him if he's not here in 10 minutes, he's fired. Then his hands were on Lena, checking her over with surprising tenderness. Are you hurt? Did he touch you anywhere besides your arm? I fell. When he went down, I went with him. She pressed a hand to her stomach, terrified. Adrian, the baby is fine. You're fine. Morrison will confirm it. But there was something wild in his eyes, something she'd never seen before. Fear, she realized. He was afraid. Doctor. Morrison arrived in 8 minutes, probably breaking every traffic law to do it. He examined Lena thoroughly while Adrian paced the room like a caged animal, radiating barely controlled violence. Everything appears normal, the doctor announced finally. Heart rate is good, no signs of distress. The fall wasn't severe enough to cause damage, but I want you on bed rest for 24 hours, just to be safe. Who was he? Lena asked Adrian the moment Morrison left. The man who grabbed me. No one important. A message. Adrian's jaw was tight. Enemies testing my defenses, seeing if they can reach what's mine. I'm not a possession. In their eyes, you are. You're my wife, the mother of my child. That makes you a target. He stopped pacing, facing her directly. This is the world I tried to warn you about. The danger I told you existed. Do you understand now why the security isn't negotiable? She did. Hated it, but understood it. What happens to him? The man who attacked me. Nothing you need to concern yourself with. Adrian, he threatened you, threatened our child. His fate is sealed. The coldness in his voice sent chills down her spine. This was the man beneath the businessman's veneer, the dangerous reality she'd glimpsed but never fully confronted. You're going to kill him. No. Adrian's expression didn't change. I'm going to let him live as an example, but he'll wish I'd killed him. Lena should have been horrified, should have protested, demanded mercy, clung to some moral high ground, but when she closed her eyes, she felt that gun against her ribs, felt the terror of thinking she might lose the baby before she'd even begun to accept its existence. Good, she heard herself say. Make sure the message is clear. Something flickered across Adrian's face, surprise perhaps, or recognition. He moved closer, sitting on the edge of her bed. You're adapting. I'm surviving. There's a difference. Not in my world. His hand covered hers. I'm increasing security. You don't leave the grounds without me. No more garden walks alone. And I'm assigning you a personal bodyguard, someone who will be with you at all times. That's excessive. That's necessary. They came for you once. They'll try again. His grip tightened. I won't let anything happen to you or the baby. Whatever it takes, Lena, whatever I have to do. The intensity in his eyes stole her breath. This wasn't about the contract anymore. Wasn't about appearances or arrangements. This was something raw and real and terrifying in its sincerity. Okay, she whispered. Whatever it takes. Her personal bodyguard arrived the next day, a woman named Katya, who looked like she could break Lena in half without effort. Former military, Adrian explained. Trained in protection and combat. Fluent in 5 languages and capable of killing someone with her bare hands. Great, Lena muttered. My own personal assassin. Katya's expression didn't change. I prefer protection specialist, Mrs. Volkov, and I'm here to keep you alive, not make friends. Despite the rocky start, Lena found herself warming to Katya's blunt efficiency. The woman was a constant presence, silent, observant, but not intrusive. She gave Lena space while remaining close enough to intervene if necessary. Why did you take this job? Lena asked, one afternoon while Katya accompanied her to a doctor's appointment. Mr. Volkov pays well, and the work is interesting. That's it? Just money? Katya was quiet for a moment. My daughter is 6. Special needs requires constant care and therapy that costs more than most people make in a year. Mr. Volkov covers all of it as part of my compensation package. So yes, money. but also the chance to give my child a future. Oh, Lena understood that calculation intimately. I'm sorry about your daughter. Don't be. She's perfect. Just different. Katya's expression softened fractionally. You're doing the same thing, aren't you? Trading your freedom for someone else's life. Is it that obvious? Your mother, the experimental treatment, the timing of your marriage. Katya shrugged. I'm paid to notice details. The question is, was it worth it? Lena pressed a hand to her growing stomach. Ask me in 2 years. As her pregnancy progressed, Adrian's behavior changed in ways Lena couldn't have predicted. He became almost obsessive about her health and comfort. Anything she mentioned wanting appeared within hours. Craving Thai food at 2 a.m., a private chef materialized to prepare it fresh. Complaining about back pain? The next day brought a massage therapist who came twice weekly. You don't have to do all this, Lena told him after he'd installed a specialized pregnancy pillow system that probably cost more than a car. Yes, I do. He was checking his phone, already moving on to the next task. You're uncomfortable. I'm fixing it. But why? The contract doesn't require you to cater to my every whim. He looked up then, really looked at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. The contract is irrelevant. You're carrying my child. That supersedes any legal arrangement. I don't understand you, Lena admitted. You're still so controlled, so distant. But then you do things like this, and I don't know what to think. Adrian set his phone down, giving her his full attention for once. I told you I don't know how to love. That's true. My childhood didn't exactly foster emotional availability. His jaw tightened. But I know how to protect what's mine. I know how to provide those things I can do. Those things I will do, to my last breath if necessary. Is that what we are? Yours? Yes. No hesitation. For better or worse, you and that baby are mine now, and I take care of what's mine. It should have felt possessive, suffocating. Instead, it felt like the closest thing to safety Lena had known in months. The second attack came 8 weeks later when Lena was showing enough that strangers could tell she was pregnant. They were returning from a charity event, another performance, another night of playing the perfect couple. Lena was exhausted, her feet swollen, wanting nothing more than to collapse into bed. She just dozed off in the back of the car when the world exploded. The crash came from the passenger side, another vehicle slamming into them with deliberate force. The car spun, Lena's seatbelt cutting into her as Adrian threw his body over hers, shielding her with his own. Glass shattered. Metal screamed. For a few terrible seconds, the world was nothing but noise and chaos and terror. Then silence. Lena. Adrian's voice, urgent against her ear. Are you hurt? I don't know. Everything hurt. Everything was wrong. The baby. We're getting you out. Stay still. Men surrounded the car. Security, Adrian's people, moving with military precision. They extracted Lena carefully, checking for injuries, while Adrian barked orders into his phone. Hospital. Now. I don't care what you have to do. I want Morrison meeting us there. Lena's vision swam. She pressed her hands to her stomach, terrified by the absence of movement, the stillness where life should be fluttering. Adrian, she gasped. I can't feel the baby. His face went white. You're in shock. It's too early to feel consistent movement anyway. Morrison will check. Everything will be fine. But his hands shook as he helped her into another car, one that had materialized from nowhere, and Lena knew he was as terrified as she was. The hospital was a blur of tests and monitors and Dr. Morrison's carefully neutral face as he performed an ultrasound. Lena gripped Adrian's hand hard enough to hurt, staring at the screen, praying for movement, for proof of life. Then, there, a flutter, a heartbeat, steady and strong. The baby's fine, Morrison announced, relief evident in his voice, completely unaffected. You, however, have bruised ribs and minor whiplash. I want you on strict bed rest for at least a week. Lena sagged back against the pillows, tears of relief streaming down her face. Thank you. Thank you. Adrian pressed his forehead to their joined hands, his shoulders shaking with what might have been tears or might have been rage. When he finally looked up, his expression was murderous. Find them, he told someone, one of his security team who'd appeared in the doorway. Find everyone involved. I want names, locations, everything. No one touches my family and lives to regret it. Family. The word hung in the air, shocking in its intimacy. Later, when they were alone in the private room Adrian had arranged, Lena found the courage to ask what she'd been wondering for weeks. Why me? Really? You could have found anyone to play your wife. Someone from your world, someone who understood the rules. Why choose a waitress you'd never met? Adrian was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, carefully, he said, I saw you, months before I approached you. One of my associates frequents that diner for business meetings. I was there for something else entirely, and I saw you serving tables, smiling at customers who treated you like furniture. And then I saw you on your break, in the alley out back, crying on the phone about your mother's diagnosis. Lena's breath caught. You were watching me? Not intentionally, but I watched you compose yourself, dry your tears, and go back inside to finish your shift like nothing was wrong. That kind of strength, that kind of resilience, I knew I needed that. Needed someone who would adapt, survive, do whatever it took. He met her eyes. I investigated you, found out about your mother, your circumstances, your complete lack of viable options, and I made you an offer I knew you couldn't refuse. That's incredibly manipulative. Yes, he didn't deny it, but it's also the truth. I chose you specifically, Lena, not randomly, not because you were convenient, because you were exactly who I needed. And now? Now that I'm pregnant and people are trying to kill me, am I still exactly who you need? You're more than I need. He struggled with the words. You're becoming something I didn't expect. He stopped, jaw clenched, unable or unwilling to finish the sentence. Someone you what? Someone I can't afford to lose. The admission seemed to cost him everything. This wasn't supposed to happen. You were supposed to be a role, a contract, a temporary solution. But you're carrying my child. You've been attacked twice because of me. And I find myself caring about that in ways that have nothing to do with appearances or arrangements. Lena's heart thundered in her chest. Adrian, I'm not good at this. At feelings, emotions, whatever this is. But I'm trying. His hand covered her stomach, gentle and reverent. For you, for the baby. I'm trying to be something other than the monster I was raised to be. She covered his hand with hers, feeling the warmth of his skin, the slight tremor that betrayed his carefully controlled exterior. You're not a monster. Monsters don't worry about pregnancy pillows, or show up when someone's violently ill, or throw themselves in front of cars to protect people they allegedly don't care about. Don't romanticize this, Lena. I'm still the man who bought you, who forced you into this life. The baby doesn't change that. No, but it changes us. Changed us already, whether we're ready for it or not. They sat in silence, his hand still resting on her stomach, both of them feeling the flutter of life between them, proof of something real emerging from their manufactured arrangement. Outside, the city continued its indifferent rhythm. Inside the hospital room, two people who'd started as strangers began the terrifying work of becoming something more. Neither knew what that something would be. But for the first time since signing the contract, Lena felt like maybe, just maybe, it might be worth finding out. The week of bed rest gave Lena time to think about the attacks, about Adrian's confession, about the life growing inside her and the impossible situation she'd created. Katya stationed herself outside Lena's bedroom door, a silent sentinel. Maria brought meals and magazines and endless cups of tea, and Adrian appeared multiple times a day, checking on her with an intensity that would have felt suffocating if it wasn't tinged with genuine concern. You need to learn how to protect yourself, he said on day 5, sitting in the chair beside her bed. Basic self-defense, weapons training, situational awareness. I'm pregnant and on bed rest. After. When Morrison clears you. His expression was serious. The attacks will continue, Lena. My enemies see you as a weakness, a pressure point they can exploit. You need to be able to defend yourself when I'm not there. I have Katya. Katya is excellent, but she's one person, and if someone gets past her, you need to know what to do. He leaned forward. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to prepare you. There's a difference. Lena thought of the gun pressed to her ribs, the crash that could have killed her and the baby. the reality of Adrian's world closing in around her. "Okay," she said finally. "Teach me." Something like approval flickered in his eyes. "I'll arrange it." True to his word, the moment Dr. Morrison cleared her for moderate activity, the training began. A converted room in the basement became a gym. Mats, punching bags, weapons she didn't recognize. Adrian himself oversaw her first lessons, with Katya providing backup instruction. "The goal isn't to win a fight," Adrian explained, demonstrating a simple wrist release technique. "It's to create an opening and escape. You're not a soldier, you're a survivor. Act accordingly." They drilled her relentlessly but carefully, always mindful of her pregnancy. How to break a hold, where to strike to cause maximum pain with minimum effort, how to recognize threats before they became attacks. "You're a natural," Katya observed after Lena successfully executed a particularly difficult escape sequence. "Good instincts." "Survival instincts," Lena corrected, breathing hard. "I've been taking care of myself for a long time." "It shows." Adrian handed her water, his fingers brushing hers. Again, from the top. The training became routine over the next month. Mornings with Katya, learning combat basics. Afternoons with Adrian, studying security protocols and threat assessment. Evenings spent exhausted but feeling, for the first time, like she had some control over her own safety. Her body changed as the pregnancy progressed. The subtle curve of her stomach became obvious. Movement became frequent, flutters that grew into distinct kicks. And with each change, Adrian's behavior shifted further from cold control toward something that almost resembled tenderness. He started reading to her in the evenings, books about pregnancy and childbirth that he approached with the same intensity he applied to business negotiations. Asked questions about what she was feeling, what she needed, what scared her about becoming a mother. "Everything scares me," Lena admitted one night as they sat together in what had become their routine. "I don't know how to do this. My mom was great, but I was just a kid. I didn't pay attention to how hard it actually was." "We'll figure it out." Adrian's hand rested on her stomach, feeling the baby kick. "Together." "You keep saying that, together, like we're actually a team." "Aren't we?" He met her eyes. "Maybe we didn't start that way. Maybe this whole thing began as a transaction. But somewhere along the line, it became something else. Something I don't have a name for yet, but something real." Lena's heart ached with dangerous hope. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the contract expires in 18 months, and I'm saying I don't want you to leave when it does." The admission was raw, unguarded. "I want you to stay. You and the baby. Not because of any legal obligation, but because this, us, whatever we're becoming, I want to see where it goes." Tears stung her eyes. "Adrian, you don't have to answer now. You don't have to answer until the 2 years are up. I just needed you to know that the option exists, that I'm not counting down the days until I'm free of you." His thumb traced gentle circles on her stomach. "I'm counting the days until this baby arrives, and our life really begins." The kiss, when it came, was nothing like the brief, perfunctory touch at their wedding. This was heat and hunger and months of careful distance finally breaking down. Adrian's mouth moved over hers with surprising gentleness, his hands cradling her face like she was something precious. Lena kissed him back, pouring into it all the confusion and fear and unexpected feeling that had grown between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, the world had shifted irrevocably. "That was real," Lena whispered. "Everything from now on is real." Adrian pressed his forehead to hers. "No more pretending, no more performing. Just us, figuring out how to build something worth keeping." The cage she'd felt trapped in for months suddenly felt less like a prison and more like a sanctuary. The man who'd bought her had somehow, impossibly, become someone she might actually want to stay with. Outside the windows, night had fallen over the city. Inside, two people who'd started as strangers held each other in the darkness, listening to the flutter of new life between them, and dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd found something neither expected but both desperately needed. The road ahead was still dangerous, still uncertain, but for the first time since signing her name to a contract in a dying diner, Lena felt like she wasn't walking it alone. And that, she was beginning to realize, might be the most valuable thing Adrian Volkov had ever given her. The kiss changed everything and nothing simultaneously. Adrian didn't suddenly become warm and effusive. That wasn't in his nature. But the careful distance he'd maintained began to collapse in small, significant ways. His hand found hers more often. He stayed longer in the evenings, talking about everything and nothing until exhaustion pulled them both towards sleep. And sometimes, when he thought she wasn't paying attention, Lena caught him watching her with an expression that made her heart stutter. But the danger didn't disappear just because something fragile and real was growing between them. 3 weeks after their first real kiss, Adrian's phone rang at 2 in the morning. Lena woke to the sound of his voice, low, controlled, lethal, speaking rapid Russian in the darkness. She'd started sleeping in his room at his insistence, both of them too wary after the attacks to maintain separate quarters. "What is it?" she asked when he ended the call. Adrian was already dressing, his movements precise despite the hour. "Problem at one of the warehouses. I need to handle it personally." "At 2 a.m.? My business doesn't keep conventional hours." He buckled his watch, checked his phone. "Stay here. Katya's already been notified. She'll be outside the door in 5 minutes. Don't leave this room until I'm back." Fear prickled down Lena's spine. "Is this about the attacks? About me?" He paused, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "I don't know yet, but I'm not taking chances." He crossed to the bed, cupping her face with surprising gentleness. "Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but Katya or me. Promise me." "Adrian, you're scaring me." "Good. Fear keeps you careful." He kissed her forehead. "I'll be back before dawn. Get some rest." But rest was impossible after he left. Lena lay in the massive bed, one hand on her swollen stomach, feeling the baby's restless movements echo her own anxiety. The house felt too big, too empty, too full of shadows that might hide threats. Katya knocked softly at 4 a.m. "Mrs. Volkov? Are you awake?" Lena opened the door to find her bodyguard's face grave with concern. "What happened? Is Adrian okay?" "Mr. Volkov is fine, but there's been a development." Katya stepped inside, closing the door firmly. "The warehouse incident was a diversion. Someone attempted to breach the estate's perimeter while security was focused on the threat downtown." Ice flooded Lena's veins. "Did they get in?" "No, but it was close, too close." Katya's expression hardened. "Mr. Volkov is implementing new protocols. Starting immediately, you'll have 2 bodyguards instead of 1. The security system is being upgraded, and he's considering relocating you to a safer location until the baby arrives." "Relocating? Where?" "I don't have those details yet, but somewhere more defensible, more isolated." The idea of leaving, of being moved like a chess piece to yet another controlled environment, made Lena's chest tight. "I want to talk to Adrian. He's on his way back now, should be here within the hour." Adrian arrived as the sun was rising, his suit rumpled and his expression carved from stone. Blood stained his shirt cuff, not his own, Lena hoped. He took one look at her sitting on the bed, wide awake and worried, and some of the tension in his shoulders eased. "You're safe," he said, like he'd needed to confirm it with his own eyes. "Katya told me what happened, about the breach attempt." He moved to the bathroom, washing his hands with methodical precision. "They're getting bolder, more coordinated. This wasn't random violence. This was a planned assault on multiple fronts." "Who are they?" "Really?" Adrian returned, leaning against the doorframe. "Remnants of an organization I dismantled 3 years ago. They've been rebuilding, consolidating power, and now they see you as the perfect way to hurt me. Because I'm your wife. Because you're everything I didn't know I wanted until I already had it." The admission was raw, unguarded. "They know that targeting you would destroy me in ways that attacking my business never could." Lena pressed a hand to her stomach, feeling the baby kick insistently. "What do we do?" "We adapt. We survive." He sat beside her on the bed, taking her hand. "I have a property upstate, completely off the grid. Security that makes this place look like a vacation home. I want to move you there until after the baby is born. And you? I'll visit when I can, but I need to be here, in the city, handling the threat at its source." His jaw clenched. "I won't let them drive me into hiding, but I also won't risk you or our child just to prove a point." The thought of being separated from him, especially now when they'd finally stopped pretending, felt unbearable. "How long?" 2 months, maybe 3. until the baby arrives safely and I've eliminated the threat completely. I don't want to be alone. You won't be. Your mother is being released from Westbrook next week. Morrison says she's responding so well to treatment, she can continue on an outpatient basis. She can come with you, and Katya, obviously. Maria, too, if you want familiar staff. Lena's throat tightened. Her mother, healthy enough to leave the hospital, the miracle she'd sold herself for, finally realized. She's really okay? Morrison says the cancer is in remission. It's early yet, but the prognosis is excellent. Adrian's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. You did that. Your sacrifice gave her a chance, and she took it. Tears spilled down Lena's cheeks. I need to see her. Today. Please. I'll arrange it. They drove to Westbrook Medical Center that afternoon, Adrian insisting on maximum security despite Lena's protests. Her mother was in her room, packing the few belongings she'd accumulated during her stay, looking healthier than Lena had seen her in over a year. Mom, Lena's voice broke as she embraced her mother, careful of her own protruding stomach. Look at you, her mother murmured, pulling back to examine Lena's face. You're glowing. Pregnancy suits you, sweetheart. You look amazing, like yourself again. I feel like myself. For the first time in forever, I feel alive. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. I get to meet my grandchild, Lena. I get to watch you be a mother. I'd given up hope of that. They cried together, holding each other, while Adrian gave them privacy by stepping into the hallway. When Lena finally composed herself, she explained the plan. The move upstate, the security concerns, the invitation for her mother to come with her. Of course I'll come, her mother said immediately. You shouldn't be alone right now, and I want to help when the baby arrives. She glanced toward the door where Adrian waited. He loves you, you know. I can see it in the way he looks at you. I don't know about love. I do. A mother knows these things. She squeezed Lena's hand. Whatever arrangement brought you two together, it's become something real. Don't be afraid of that. The move happened within 48 hours, executed with military precision. The property upstate was exactly as Adrian described, a sprawling modern structure built into a hillside, surrounded by forest and accessible only by a single guarded road. Beautiful and isolated in equal measure. Lena's mother settled into one of the guest suites, marveling at the luxury while trying not to show how overwhelmed she was. Maria unpacked Lena's belongings with quiet efficiency, and Katya established security protocols that transformed the house into a fortress. Adrian stayed for 2 days, ensuring everything was in place before his responsibilities dragged him back to the city. I don't like leaving you, he admitted the night before his departure. They stood on the terrace, overlooking the forest, the autumn air crisp with the promise of winter. I don't like you leaving either. Lena leaned into his warmth. But we both know you have to. I'll come back every weekend, more often if I can manage it. His hand rested on her stomach, feeling the baby's movements. Call me if anything changes. Anything at all. I will. Promise me you'll be careful, that you'll stay alert, that you won't let your guard down just because this place feels safe. I promise. She turned in his arms, looking up at him. You be careful too. Whatever you're planning to do to these people who are after us, don't get yourself killed doing it. Something dark flickered in his eyes. They threatened you, threatened our child. Their fate was sealed the moment they made that choice. Adrian, he kissed her, deep and thorough, pouring into it everything he couldn't say. When they broke apart, both breathless, his forehead rested against hers. I'm not a good man, Lena. I never have been. But for you, for the baby, I'm trying to be better. That has to be enough. It is enough. She meant it. You're enough. He left at dawn, and the house felt emptier without him. The weeks that followed established a strange new rhythm. Lena's mother proved invaluable, cooking meals when Lena's cravings demanded specific foods, rubbing her swollen feet, offering advice about pregnancy that Dr. Morrison's clinical expertise couldn't provide. They talked for hours, making up for the months they'd been separated, and Lena watched her mother grow stronger each day. Adrian called every evening without fail, their conversations ranging from brief check-ins to rambling discussions that lasted until Lena fell asleep with the phone against her ear. He sent gifts, books, music, impractical things for the baby that made her simultaneously laugh and cry. And every Friday evening, he arrived at the estate, exhausted and hungry for her presence. Those weekends became precious. Adrian would appear with tension carved into every line of his body, the weight of whatever he was dealing with in the city evident in his expression. But gradually, over the course of 48 hours, Lena watched him transform. The hard edges softened. The constant vigilance eased. By Sunday evening, he almost looked at peace. "You're good for me," he told her one Saturday afternoon. They were in what had become the nursery, Adrian assembling a crib with intense focus while Lena organized tiny clothes. "How do you figure?" "You make me remember there's more to life than survival and strategy, that there are things worth protecting that have nothing to do with power or control." He fitted two pieces together with a satisfying click. "You make me want to be the man you seem to think I am." Lena set down the onesie she'd been folding. "And what man do I think you are?" "Someone capable of love, of gentleness, of being a real father to this baby." He looked up, vulnerability stark in his eyes. "I don't know if I can be that person, Lena. My father was a monster. I was raised to be like him. What if that's all I know how to be?" She crossed to him, taking his hands in hers. "You're already different. The fact that you're worried about it, that you're trying, that's what matters. Your father wouldn't have cared enough to worry. You have too much faith in me. Maybe you don't have enough faith in yourself." She guided his hand to her stomach. "This baby is going to love you, not because of what you do or what you provide, but because you're their father, and I—" She hesitated, the words both terrifying and inevitable. "I'm falling in love with you. The real you. Not the monster you were trained to be, but the man you're choosing to become." Adrian's breath caught. For a long moment he just stared at her, and Lena wondered if she'd made a catastrophic mistake. Then he pulled her into his arms, carefully, mindful of her stomach, and held her like she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. "I don't deserve you," he whispered against her hair. "But I'm selfish enough to keep you anyway." "Good, because I'm not going anywhere." The third attack came on a Tuesday, 6 weeks before Lena's due date. She was in the garden with her mother, enjoying the afternoon sun, when Katya's entire demeanor changed. The bodyguard's hand went to her concealed weapon, her eyes scanning the tree line with laser focus. "Inside! Now!" Katya's voice was absolute command. "Mrs. Volkov, your mother, move quickly, but don't run." Lena's mother grabbed her hand and they hurried toward the house. Behind them, Katya was speaking rapidly into her radio, coordinating with the perimeter security team. They'd almost reached the door when the first shot rang out. The sound was shockingly loud, cracking through the peaceful afternoon like a whip. Lena's mother screamed. Katya shoved them both through the door, her body a shield, returning fire with cold precision. "Lock yourselves in the safe room," Katya ordered. "Third floor, behind the bookcase in the master bedroom. Code is your birthday. Go!" More shots, the sound of breaking glass, male voices shouting in Russian. Lena grabbed her mother's hand and ran, as much as a woman 8 months pregnant could run. Her mother, still weak from her illness, struggled to keep pace. They made it to the third floor, Lena's lungs burning, and found the bookcase Katya had indicated. "My birthday. Which format?" Lena's hands shook as she faced the keypad. "Try month, day, year." She punched in the numbers. The bookcase swung open, revealing a reinforced door. They stumbled inside just as they heard footsteps pounding up the stairs. The safe room was exactly that. A windowless cell with reinforced walls, basic supplies, and a communication system. Lena locked the door and immediately went to the phone, dialing Adrian's direct line. He answered on the first ring. "Lena? What's wrong?" "They're here. In the house. Katya got us to the safe room, but there were shots. Adrian, I don't know if she's okay, if anyone's okay." "How many attackers did you see?" "I don't know. 3, maybe more." "Stay in that room. Don't open the door for anyone but me or Katya. I'm 10 minutes out. I was already on my way when the perimeter alarm triggered." His voice was lethal calm. "You're safe where you are. The room is impenetrable. Just stay calm and wait for me." "My mother's with me. She's terrified." "Keep her calm. Keep yourself calm. Think about the baby. Slow your breathing. I'm coming, Lena. I'm almost there." The next 8 minutes were the longest of Lena's life. She held her mother, both of them trembling, listening to muffled sounds from beyond the reinforced door. Gunshots, shouts, something heavy hitting a wall. Then, terrifyingly, silence. When the knock came, Lena's heart nearly stopped. "Lena," Adrian's voice tightly controlled. "It's me. Open the door." "Well, how do I know it's really you?" "Because I know you hate chamomile tea even though everyone keeps giving it to you. Because you talk in your sleep about the diner. Because 2 nights ago, you cried watching a commercial about dogs." His voice softened. "Because I love you, even though I've never said it out loud until this moment. Now open the door." Lena's hands shook as she unlocked it. Adrian stood on the other side, his suit jacket discarded, his shirt spotted with blood, a gun still in his hand. Behind him, Katya leaned against the wall, pressing a cloth to a wound on her arm, but very much alive. "Are you hurt?" Adrian's hands were on Lena immediately, checking her over with frantic thoroughness. "No, we're fine. Mom's okay. But Katya—" "Flesh wound," Katya said dismissively. "I've had worse." "The attackers? Dead or in custody?" Adrian's expression was carved from ice. "We were ready for them. The breach last month taught us their patterns. This time, we were waiting." Lena's mother emerged from the safe room on shaking legs. "Is it over?" "For now." Adrian holstered his weapon. "But this location is compromised. We're moving, tonight." "Moving where?" Lena felt the room spinning. "Somewhere they'll never find you. Somewhere I should have taken you from the beginning." He pulled her close, his heart racing against her ear. "I'm done playing defense. I'm done letting them dictate our lives through fear. This ends now." The new location was revealed 2 hours later as they drove through the night, a private island accessible only by helicopter or boat. Adrian owned it through a series of shell companies so complex even his closest associates didn't know about it. The house was smaller than the upstate property, but no less secure. Perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean, surrounded by natural barriers and state-of-the-art security, it was as close to impenetrable as humanly possible. "How long have you owned this?" Lena asked as they toured the space. 5 years. I bought it as an emergency fallback. Never thought I'd actually need it." He watched her take in the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water. "I know it's isolated, more isolated than before, but it's safe, Lena, completely safe." "And you?" "I'll stay. My second can handle things in the city for a while." His hand found hers. "I'm not leaving you again, not until this baby is born and the threat is eliminated completely." That night, after her mother was settled and Katya had established new security protocols, Lena and Adrian stood on the terrace watching moonlight shimmer across the water. "You said you loved me," Lena said quietly. "During the attack, when you were trying to get me to open the door." Adrian's grip tightened on the railing. "I did. Did you mean it? Or was it just something to say to make me trust it was really you?" He turned to face her, and in the moonlight, his expression was stripped of all pretense. "I meant it. I've probably meant it for months, but was too damn stubborn and scared to admit it." His hand cupped her face. "I love you, Lena. Not because of the baby, not because of the contract, but because you walked into my life and refused to be diminished by it. Because you're stronger than anyone I've ever known. Because you make me want to be better than everything I was raised to be." Tears streamed down Lena's face. "I love you too. I tried not to. Tried to keep it as just an arrangement, just survival, but somewhere between the morning sickness and the attacks and the late-night conversations, I fell completely and hopelessly in love with you." The kiss was different from all the others, deeper, more certain, weighted with promises they were finally ready to make. When they broke apart, both breathless, Adrian pressed his forehead to hers. "The contract expires in 6 months," he said. "I'm burning it, tonight. Whatever we are now, whatever we're becoming, it has nothing to do with legal obligations or business arrangements." "What does it have to do with?" "Choice. I choose you. I choose this. I choose to build a life with you that's real and messy and complicated and completely ours. Even though I'm a waitress who didn't know which fork to use?" He laughed, actually laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Especially because of that. You're real, Lena. In a world full of performance and pretense, you're the only real thing I have." They went inside as the wind picked up off the ocean. In the master bedroom, Adrian built a fire while Lena changed into comfortable clothes. Later, they lay together in the massive bed, Lena's back against Adrian's chest, his hand resting on her stomach. "The baby's active tonight," he observed as tiny kicks drummed against his palm. "Probably picking up on my adrenaline from earlier." Lena laced her fingers through his. "Do you think about it? About being a father?" "Constantly. It terrifies me." "You'll be good at it." "How can you be so sure?" "Because you care enough to be terrified. Because you're already protective and careful and trying so hard to be better." She shifted to look at him. "And because I'll be there to help you figure it out. We're doing this together, remember?" "Together." He kissed her temple. "I like the sound of that." The next few weeks passed in strange tranquility. Cut off from the outside world, surrounded by ocean and security, Lena's pregnancy progressed without incident. Her mother thrived in the island air, gaining strength daily. And Adrian transformed from the cold, controlled man who'd bought her into something Lena had never imagined. A partner, genuinely present and engaged. He took over many of the preparations for the baby's arrival, turning a small bedroom into a nursery with the same intense focus he applied to everything. They debated names, argued playfully about parenting philosophies neither had experience with, and fell asleep each night tangled together. "I never knew I could be this happy," Lena admitted one evening as they watched the sunset paint the ocean gold and crimson. "Neither did I." Adrian's arm tightened around her shoulders. "I thought happiness was weakness, that contentment made you vulnerable. But this, being with you, preparing for our child, this feels like the strongest thing I've ever done." "Because it's real." "Because it's real," he agreed. Dr. Morrison flew in weekly via helicopter to monitor Lena's progress. On one visit, 3 weeks before her due date, his examination took longer than usual. When he finally emerged from the bedroom-turned-exam room, his expression was serious. "The baby's in position. Everything looks good, but I want to stay on the island for the next few weeks, just to be safe. Your blood pressure is slightly elevated, and given everything you've been through, I'd rather be here than scrambling to arrive if you go into labor early." "Is something wrong?" Lena's hand went instinctively to her stomach. "Nothing wrong, just an abundance of caution." Morrison smiled reassuringly. "You're healthy, the baby's healthy. I just want to ensure we stay that way." Adrian arranged for Morrison to have his own suite, along with a backup obstetric nurse and enough medical equipment to handle any complication. Lena would have found it excessive if she wasn't secretly relieved to have medical expertise so close. 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning when the ocean was gray and restless with an approaching storm, Lena woke to a sensation that was both familiar and entirely new. A tightening across her abdomen, uncomfortable but not quite painful. She waited, timing it. 15 minutes later, another. Then 12 minutes. Then 10. "Adrian," she shook his shoulder gently. "I think it's time." He was awake instantly, already moving. "You're sure?" "The contractions are regular and getting closer together, so yes, I'm sure." What followed was controlled chaos. Morrison arrived within minutes, calm and professional. The obstetric nurse set up equipment while Katya hovered anxiously in the hallway. Lena's mother held her hand through the early contractions, offering encouragement and reassurance. And Adrian stayed by her side through all of it, 16 hours of labor that ranged from manageable to excruciating. He held her hand, wiped her forehead, breathed with her through contractions, and never once looked away. "I can't do this," Lena gasped during a particularly brutal contraction. "I can't. It's too much." "Yes, you can." Adrian's voice was absolute certainty. "You're the strongest person I know. You've survived everything life has thrown at you. You can do this." "Easy for you to say. You're not the one being torn in half." "If I could take this for you, I would. But I can't. So I'm here, and I'm not leaving, and you're going to get through this because that's what you do. You survive. You endure. You win." The baby arrived at sunset, emerging into the world with a furious cry that announced her presence with unmistakable authority. Morrison placed her on Lena's chest, tiny and perfect and absolutely real. "A girl," the doctor announced, beaming. "Healthy lungs, good color, beautiful." Lena stared down at her daughter, overwhelmed by love so intense it hurt. "She's perfect." Adrian's hand trembled as he touched the baby's tiny fingers. His expression was naked with emotion, wonder and fear and love all tangled together. "She's so small." "She's perfect," Lena repeated, tears streaming down her face. "Look what we made. Look what you did." He kissed Lena's forehead, his voice rough. "You're incredible. Thank you. Thank you for this, for her, for everything." But later, after Morrison had completed his checks and confirmed that both mother and baby were healthy, after Lena's mother had cried happy tears while holding her granddaughter, after Katya had made surprisingly cooing noises over the infant, later, when it was just the three of them in the quiet room, Adrian held his daughter for the first time. She fit in his arms like she'd been made for them, her tiny face scrunched in sleep. He stared down at her with an expression of such reverence that Lena's heart ached. "I don't know how to do this," he whispered. "Neither do I. We'll figure it out together. I'm going to protect her, no matter what it costs. No one will ever hurt her the way I was hurt. She'll never know the kind of fear I grew up with." "I know, because you love her already. More than I knew was possible." He looked up, meeting Lena's eyes. "More than I thought I was capable of feeling." "Welcome to parenthood," Lena said with a tired smile. "Apparently it turns ruthless mafia bosses into puddles." "Apparently so." He returned the baby to her arms, then climbed carefully onto the bed beside them. "What should we name her?" They'd debated names for weeks without reaching consensus, but looking at her daughter's tiny face, Lena knew immediately. Hope, because that's what she represents, what she gave my mother, what she gave us. Hope. Adrian tested the name, his finger tracing their daughter's cheek. "Hope Volkov, I like it." "Hope Carter Volkov," Lena corrected. "She gets both of us." "Hope Carter Volkov," he agreed. "Perfect." Outside, the storm that had been threatening all day finally broke, rain lashing against the windows. But inside, in the warm room overlooking the wild ocean, a family that had been born from desperation and necessity held each other and marveled at the impossible gift they'd been given. The cage Lena had felt trapped in had transformed into sanctuary. The contract that had bound her had evolved into choice. And the stranger who'd bought her had become the man she loved, the father of her child, the partner of her heart. They had months left before the contract's expiration. But as Lena drifted toward exhausted sleep, hope nestled against her chest and Adrian's arm wrapped protectively around them both. She knew with absolute certainty that she would never leave. This was home. This was family. This was everything she'd never known she needed but would fight to her last breath to keep. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside there was only peace. Hope was 3 weeks old when Adrian's phone rang with the call he'd been waiting for. Lena was nursing the baby in the nursery, exhausted but content, when she heard Adrian's voice drift up from downstairs, clipped, controlled, lethal. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone made her stomach clench with familiar fear. He appeared in the doorway moments later, his expression unreadable. They found him. Dmitry Kozlov, the one who ordered the attacks. Lena's arms tightened protectively around Hope. Where? Hiding in Moscow. Thought distance would protect him. Adrian's smile was cold enough to freeze blood. He was wrong. What are you going to do? What needs to be done? He crossed to her, pressing a kiss to Hope's downy head, then to Lena's forehead. I have to go back to the city. Handle this personally. It's the only way to ensure it ends. Fear clawed at Lena's throat. How long? 3 days? Maybe 4? His hand cupped her face. I'll have triple security here. Katya plus 6 more guards. You'll be completely safe. I'm not worried about us. I'm worried about you. She shifted Hope to one arm, reaching for Adrian with the other. What if something goes wrong? What if they're waiting for you? Then I deal with it. But this has to end, Lena. I won't raise our daughter in fear. Won't spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders. His eyes were hard with determination. Kozlov threatened my family. That's a death sentence he signed himself. Just promise me you'll come back. Promise me Hope won't grow up without a father. I promise. He kissed her, deep and thorough. Nothing will keep me from you two. Nothing. He left before dawn, and the island felt emptier without him. Lena threw herself into caring for Hope, trying not to watch the clock, trying not to imagine all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong. Her mother noticed immediately. He'll be fine. Men like Adrian don't die easily. Men like Adrian make enemies who are just as dangerous as they are. Lena paced the living room, Hope asleep against her shoulder. I should be used to this by now. The danger, the violence, all of it. But I'm not. Every time he walks out that door, I'm terrified it's the last time I'll see him. That's love. Her mother's smile was sad and knowing. It makes us vulnerable in ways nothing else can. The first day passed in agonizing slowness. Adrian called twice, brief updates that told her nothing except that he was alive and working. The second day brought only a single text message, making progress, love you both. On the third day, silence. Lena tried not to panic, told herself he was busy, focused, dealing with things that required his complete attention. But as hours stretched into evening with no word, fear transformed into terror. Something's wrong, she told Katya at midnight. He always checks in, always, even if it's just a text. Katya's expression was carefully neutral. Mr. Volkov can take care of himself. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. But Katya's hand rested on her concealed weapon, and Lena knew the bodyguard was worried too. Dawn of the fourth day broke gray and cold. Lena had barely slept, spending the night feeding Hope and staring at her phone, willing it to ring. When the helicopter's distant thrum finally reached her ears around 7 a.m., she ran to the window with her heart in her throat. Adrian emerged from the helicopter looking like he'd been through a war. His face was bruised, one eye swollen nearly shut, and he moved with the careful precision of someone managing significant pain. But he was alive. He was here. He was home. Lena met him at the door, Hope clutching her shirt, tears already streaming down her face. You're hurt. I'm fine. His smile was lopsided from the swelling. You should see the other guy. That's not funny. Wasn't meant to be. He reached for them both, pulling them carefully into his arms. It's done, Lena. Kozlov is dead. His organization is scattered. The threat is over. You're sure? I'm sure. He pressed his forehead to hers, his breath shaking. I made certain. Left no loose ends, no successors, no one with the resources or will to come after us. We're safe. Finally, completely safe. Doctor, Morrison insisted on examining Adrian immediately, discovering 3 cracked ribs, extensive bruising, and a concussion that should have sent him to a hospital. Adrian refused to leave the island, sitting impatiently through Morrison's treatment while Lena hovered nearby. You could have been killed, she said once Morrison had left and they were alone in their bedroom. But I wasn't. Adrian winced as he carefully lowered himself onto the bed. And now it's over. We can actually live our lives without constantly watching for threats. What exactly happened? Things I won't burden you with the details of. Kozlov is gone. That's all that matters. Adrian, I did what I had to do to protect my family. His voice was flat, final. Some things you're better off not knowing. Lena understood. Didn't like it, but understood. There were parts of Adrian's world she would never fully be part of, darkness she would never completely see. She could accept that, as long as he came home to her. Recovery took weeks. Adrian's ribs healed slowly, his bruises fading through spectacular shades of purple and green. But something else healed too, the constant tension he'd carried since the first attack. Gradually, as days passed without incident, without threats, without shadows lurking at the edge of their peace, he began to relax in ways Lena had never seen. He was present with Hope in ways that still surprised Lena. Changed diapers without complaint, walked the floor at 2 a.m. when the baby was fussy, spoke to their daughter in Russian with a gentleness that made Lena's heart ache. The ruthless man who'd bought her had transformed into a father who melted completely when his daughter gripped his finger with her tiny hand. You're a natural at this, Lena observed one evening, watching him rock Hope to sleep. I'm terrified every second that I'm doing it wrong. But his smile was soft, his eyes on their daughter's face. She's so small, so fragile. I keep thinking about all the ways I could damage her. By loving her, by being present, by trying so hard to be better than what you were taught? Lena shook her head. You're not going to damage her, Adrian. You're going to give her everything you never had. I hope so. He carefully transferred the sleeping baby to her crib. She deserves the world. She deserves parents who love each other and her. She's already got that. 6 weeks after Kozlov's death, Adrian made an announcement over breakfast. I'm restructuring the business, moving away from the gray areas into completely legitimate operations. Lena nearly choked on her coffee. What? I've been thinking about it since Hope was born. What kind of legacy I want to leave her. What kind of man I want to be when she's old enough to understand who her father is. He set down his fork. I can't undo the past, can't erase the things I've done, but I can choose differently going forward. That's a massive change. It is. It'll take time, years probably. Careful disentanglement from certain partnerships, strategic pivots, rebuilding from the ground up in some areas. His expression was determined. But I'm doing it. For you. For Hope. For the life I want us to have. Lena's throat tightened with emotion. You're sure? This is your entire world. My entire world is sitting across from me right now. Everything else is just business. He reached across the table, taking her hand. I want Hope to be proud of her father. Want to build something she can actually inherit without moral compromise. Want to be the man you see when you look at me, not the monster I was trained to be. I love you. The words were inadequate for what she felt. I love you so much. I love you too, both of you, more than I have words for. The contract's expiration date arrived on a Tuesday in spring. 2 years exactly since Lena had signed her name in a dying diner, trading her freedom for her mother's life. Adrian burned it ceremonially in the fireplace, both of them watching the paper curl and blacken and turn to ash. That's done, he said simply. You're free. Legally, financially, completely free. The divorce papers are ready if you want them. The settlement we agreed to is yours regardless. You can leave tomorrow if you choose to. Lena had known this conversation was coming, had thought about it constantly as the date approached. The contract had been her prison and her salvation, the thing that bound her and the thing that ultimately freed her. She could walk away now, take the money, take Hope, build whatever life she wanted. She thought about the scared girl who'd signed those papers, desperate and hopeless. Thought about everything she'd endured, the loneliness, the fear, the attacks that nearly killed her. Thought about Adrian, who'd started as a stranger and become everything she never knew she needed. I'm not leaving, she said quietly. Not tomorrow. Not ever. You don't have to decide right now. The offer stands indefinitely. If you wake up a year from now and realize this isn't what you want, Adrian, stop. She turned to face him fully. I'm not leaving. Not because of the money. Not because of some obligation. I'm staying because I choose to. Because this is my home. You're my home. This life we've built. Messy and complicated and nothing like what I imagined. It's mine, and I'm keeping it. Even knowing what I am, what I've done, I know who you are. All of it. The darkness and the light, the monster and the man. And I choose all of it. I choose you. She moved into his arms. So put those divorce papers away. We're not going to need them. His embrace was tight enough to steal her breath. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Then I have something for you. He pulled back, reaching into his pocket. The contract is dead, but I'd like to replace it with something real. The ring was nothing like the simple platinum band from their courthouse wedding. This was a work of art, a single diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light like captured stars. This isn't about ownership or contracts or arrangements, Adrian said, his voice rough. This is about choice, about love, about building a future because we want to, not because we have to. He took her left hand, sliding the ring onto her finger beside the original band. Marry me again, Lena. Marry me because you want to, because we're choosing this together. Tears streamed down her face. Yes, yes, of course, yes. They were married again 3 months later, on the island where Hope had been born. It was nothing like the sterile courthouse ceremony. Lena's mother stood as her witness, healthy and glowing, holding Hope, who was dressed in a tiny white dress. Katya attended in full formal attire, looking uncomfortable but pleased. Even Maria made the journey, crying happy tears throughout the brief ceremony. The officiant was flown in specially, a woman who spoke about love and choice and the courage it takes to build something real from broken beginnings. Adrian's vows were simple but devastating in their sincerity. I didn't know how to love when I found you. Didn't believe I was capable of it. But you taught me. You and Hope showed me that there's more to life than power and control. That the greatest strength is allowing yourself to be vulnerable with someone who sees all of you and chooses you anyway. His hands trembled slightly as they held hers. I choose you, Lena. Today and every day forward. Not because of any contract, but because you're the best thing that ever happened to me, and I'm selfish enough to keep you forever if you'll let me. Lena's vows were equally raw. You bought me at my lowest point, offered me a deal I couldn't refuse because the alternative was unthinkable. I thought I was selling myself into a cage. But you gave me freedom I'd never known. Showed me what it means to be truly seen, truly valued, truly loved. She squeezed his hands. I choose you, Adrian. Choose this life we're building. Choose every day to love you more than I did the day before. Choose to be your wife not because I have to, but because I can't imagine being anything else. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the kiss was nothing like the brief, perfunctory touch from 2 years ago. This was heat and promise and certainty. This was real in every way that mattered. The small reception that followed was intimate and joyful. Lena's mother gave a toast that had everyone crying, talking about second chances and the miracles that sometimes emerge from our darkest moments. Katya actually smiled. Hope, passed from person to person, absorbed the love surrounding her with wide, serious eyes. Later, as the sun set over the ocean in spectacular shades of gold and crimson, Lena and Adrian stood on the terrace watching the waves. Do you ever regret it? Adrian asked quietly. That day in the diner, signing the contract, everything that came after. Lena thought about the scared girl she'd been, thought about the impossible choice she'd faced, thought about everything she'd endured to get to this moment, the loneliness, the fear, the attacks, the pain. No, she said honestly. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Signing away 2 years of my life, binding myself to a stranger, walking into a world I didn't understand. But it gave me my mother's life, gave me you, gave me hope. She leaned into his warmth. How could I regret the path that led here? I regret how it started, the manipulation, the way I forced your hand. But you didn't force what came after. We chose that. Chose to transform a transaction into something real. She looked up at him. That's what matters. Not how we started, but who we became. Together, he murmured. Together. The months that followed were the most peaceful of Lena's life. Adrian's business transformation progressed steadily. Some partnerships ended, occasionally messily, but without violence. New ventures launched, all carefully legitimate. It would take years to complete the transition, but the foundation was solid. Hope grew from infant to baby, who smiled and laughed and recognized her parents' voices. Lena's mother thrived, her cancer remaining in remission, growing stronger and more vibrant each day. She'd moved into a cottage on the island property, close enough to help with Hope, but far enough for privacy. I never thought I'd see this, she told Lena one afternoon while they watched Hope explore the grass on unsteady legs. You, happy, settled, with a family of your own. Neither did I. Lena caught Hope as she stumbled, lifting her daughter with practiced ease. 2 years ago, I was just trying to survive each day. Now I'm actually living. That young man who came into the diner, I hated him at first, When you told me you'd married him, I thought he'd stolen your life. He did, in a way. Lena settled Hope on her hip. But then he gave me a different one. A better one, ultimately. Love has a way of transforming even the darkest beginnings into something beautiful. Her mother's eyes were distant. Your father and I, we started rough too. Different circumstances, but rough. But we chose each other every day until the day he died. That's what matters, the choosing. Lena understood now, in ways she couldn't have 2 years ago. Marriage wasn't the contract or the ceremony. It was the daily choice to show up, to try, to love, even when it was hard. Adrian appeared from the house, shirt sleeves rolled up, looking more relaxed than Lena had ever seen him. There are my girls. He scooped Hope from Lena's arms, tossing her gently into the air. Hope's delighted shriek echoed across the grounds. Careful with her, Lena warned, but she was smiling. She's fine. Aren't you, little one? He settled Hope against his chest. Strong like her mother. Stubborn like her father, Lena countered. That too. They fell into comfortable silence, watching the ocean, hope content between them. These moments, simple, domestic, utterly ordinary, were what Lena treasured most. After so much chaos and fear, the peace felt earned. I have news, Adrian said eventually. The foundation paperwork was approved. We can start operations next month. The foundation had been Lena's idea, using a portion of Adrian's wealth to help families facing medical crises they couldn't afford. Experimental treatments, specialized care, anything that fell through the cracks of traditional insurance. It would be run legitimately, transparently, helping others the way Adrian's money had helped Lena's mother. That's wonderful. Lena's eyes stung with happy tears. How many families can we help initially? Starting conservative 10 at a time. As we establish protocols and prove effectiveness, we'll scale up. He shifted hope to one arm, pulling Lena close with the other. You were right. This is the best use of resources I've accumulated, transforming pain into purpose. Your daughter is going to grow up knowing her father helps people. Lena pressed a kiss to his jaw. That he chose to be better. Our daughter, he corrected. And I'm choosing to be better because of you, both of you. Hope babbled something incomprehensible, grabbing Adrian's collar with sticky hands. He didn't even flinch, just pressed a kiss to her downy hair and murmured something in Russian that made the baby laugh. Lena's heart swelled watching them. This was her family. This was home. Not the island, not the house. These two people who'd transformed her life in ways she never could have imagined. On Hope's first birthday, they threw a party that was simultaneously too much and exactly right. The island was decorated with more balloons than seemed structurally sound. A cake large enough to feed 20 people sat on the table, despite there being only 6 attendees. Hope, oblivious to the fuss, was more interested in the wrapping paper than her gifts. She's going to be spoiled, Lena's mother observed, watching Adrian present Hope with yet another stuffed animal. Absolutely, Adrian agreed, unrepentant. She's my daughter. Spoiling her is my privilege. Our daughter, Lena corrected, the same way he always corrected her. And yes, she's going to be completely spoiled, but also loved and safe and given every opportunity to become whoever she wants to be. Not a bad legacy, Katya said. She'd become almost family over the past year, her initial professional distance warming into genuine affection. Better than most of us got. The evening wound down with Hope, asleep in Adrian's arms, party decorations drooping, and a general sense of contentment settling over everyone. After the guests had retired to their own spaces, Lena and Adrian sat together on the terrace, their spot, where they'd had so many important conversations. 1 year, Lena mused. Hope's been in the world for a whole year. Best year of my life. Adrian's certainty was absolute. Watching her grow, watching you as a mother, building this life together, nothing I accomplished before compares. Not even your business empire? Especially not that. That was about power and control and proving I was stronger than what tried to break me. He looked down at Hope's sleeping face. This is about love, about creating something good in a world that showed me mostly darkness. This matters in ways nothing else ever did. Lena rested her head on his shoulder, careful not to jostle their sleeping daughter. I'm glad I signed that contract. Even though I manipulated you into it? Even though. Because it led here. To this moment, this life, this family. She paused. Do you think about it? About how differently things could have gone? Constantly. Every possible bad ending plays through my mind. His arm tightened around her. But we got the good ending instead. Against all odds, despite everything working against us, we got this. We made this, Lena corrected. We chose it. Every day, we chose each other and this life. That's not luck. That's us refusing to settle for anything less than real. They sat in comfortable silence as stars emerged overhead, the ocean's rhythm a constant backdrop. Hope stirred slightly but didn't wake, secure in her father's arms. I love you, Adrian said quietly. I know I say it often now, but I don't think I'll ever stop marveling at being able to say it and mean it. I love you too. Both of you more than I have words for. The future stretched ahead of them, uncertain in its details but certain in its foundation. There would be challenges. Hope would grow, bringing new joys and new worries. The business transformation would continue, with all its complications. Life would happen, as it always did, with its mixture of triumph and struggle, but they would face it together. That was the promise they'd made, not in a courthouse or even in their second real wedding, but in the daily choosing, the constant showing up, the refusal to let fear or circumstance dictate their path. Lena thought about the girl who'd served coffee in a dying diner, desperate and hopeless, facing an impossible choice. She'd been so afraid, so certain that signing that contract meant the end of any chance at real happiness. She'd been spectacularly wrong. The contract had been a beginning, not an ending. The cage had transformed into sanctuary. The stranger had become her soulmate, and the life she'd thought she was selling had actually been the life she was claiming. "What are you thinking?" Adrian asked, reading her silence. "That I'd do it all again. Every hard moment, every scary decision, every single choice that led here. I'd do it all again in a heartbeat." "So would I." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Best deal I ever made." "Best deal we ever made," she corrected, and kissed him beneath the stars while their daughter slept between them, secure and loved and completely unaware of the miracle her existence represented. The cage was gone. The contract was ashes. All that remained was choice, the choice to love, to stay, to build something real from impossible beginnings. And Lena chose it all, chose Adrian with his darkness and his light, his past and his determination to be better, chose hope with her sticky hands and her father's stubborn chin and her mother's resilient spirit, chose this life they'd forged from desperation and necessity and transformed into something beautiful. The girl who'd signed away 2 years of her life had gotten something infinitely more valuable in return, a future worth having, a family worth fighting for, and a love that transcended every calculation and contract. As the ocean whispered against the shore and hope dreamed innocent dreams, and Adrian held them both like they were his entire world, Lena understood with perfect clarity that some cages exist only in our minds. Some prisons are actually doors we're too afraid to walk through. And sometimes, the thing that looks like the end of everything is actually the beginning of something extraordinary. She'd walked into the cage willingly, desperately, with no other options. And she'd walked out the other side free, not because the contract expired, but because somewhere in the middle of playing a role and performing a part, she'd discovered she wasn't pretending anymore. She was home. And home, as it turned out, was exactly where she chose to be.